Chapter 1277. Ling Han sheathed his sword. Zhu Liyun's headless body fell to the ground, and her head also fell from the sky. There was an intoxicated expression on her face, as if she didn't realize that death was coming. A look of shock immediately appeared on Xie Donglai's face. Just then, he had also almost been bewitched by the demonic flowers. Fortunately, he had been far away, and he had cultivated his divine sense before. Thus, he had a strong will, so it was impossible for him to be bewitched so easily. However, the two old servants were different. Even now, their consciousness was a little hazy, and it was as if they had forgotten who they were. What a terrifying demonic flower! Faceless was unmoved. He was only slightly curious and asked, "Brother Ling, is this the misty soul-capturing flower?" "Brother Faceless, you have a good eye," Ling Han said with a smile. "This is the misty soul-capturing flower." He held the misty soul-capturing flower in his left hand and the divine demon sword in his right hand. He strode toward Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai's expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth, and a golden talisman appeared in his hand. He slapped it against his chest, and a powerful golden light instantly radiated. Ling Han and Faceless couldn't help but look away. It was too blinding, and it could even burn their eyes. When they walked over again, they saw that the golden light enveloped Xie Donglai and the two old servants, and they flew into the sky. In the immortal realm, only heavenly body tier elites could grasp the more profound regulations of heaven and earth. They could break free from their restraints and fly. In the two-realm battlefield, the regulations were extremely chaotic, so it was even more difficult to maintain flight. However, Xie Donglai and the others were extremely fast under the golden light. Clearly, that divine talisman couldn't be the work of a heavenly body tier elite. The Xie clan had an eternal river tier elite, so it was normal for them to refine some divine talismans for their descendants. However, the Xie clan had so many clansmen, and eternal river tier elites couldn't refine divine talismans all day long. This kind of divine talisman should be extremely valuable in the Xie clan. Even with Xie Donglai's status, he probably only had one. It was a true life-saving technique. He was afraid that Ling Han would use the misty soul-capturing flower against him, and he was even more afraid that Faceless would also make a move. That would be truly unsolvable. To cultivators at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier was no less than beings at the heavenly body tier. Ling Han shook his head and put away the divine demon sword and the misty soul-capturing flower. In reality, the misty soul-capturing flower's usefulness was limited. At the very least, it had no effect on Faceless. Clearly, the stronger one's willpower was, the more they could resist the demonic flower's bewitchment. Faceless wasn't interested in gossiping, and he didn't ask about the enmity between Ling Han, Xie Donglai, and Zhu Liyun. Instead, he continued to discuss martial art with Ling Han. Another 7 days passed before he reluctantly bade farewell to Ling Han. This sparring session had been very beneficial to him and had given him a lot of inspiration. He had decided to go into seclusion for a few months or even a year or two in order to break through to the peak of the Lamita realm. Ling Han also entered the Black Tower. 3 months had already passed, and he was able to temper his body with the immortal flames again. As the saying went, once unfamiliar, twice familiar. However, Ling Han had experienced the tempering of his body with the immortal flames twice, leaving behind only incomparably painful memories. If it were possible, he really didn't want to be burned to ashes again. However, for the sake of becoming stronger, he still resolutely threw himself into the furnace. 3 days later, Ling Han came out of the cauldron. He had once again transformed into a tiny infant, but if one were to carefully compare, he was at most 3 months old the first time, but this time he looked to be at least 7 months old. This represented his improvement in the indestructible heaven scroll, especially in the aspect of rising from the ashes. There's almost a 2% chance that I'll be able to instantly return to peak condition, Ling Han thought to himself. However, this still wasn't safe. After dying 50 times, he would only be able to come back to life once. This kind of chance was frighteningly low. However, I can eat berserk blood spirit pills again. Rising from the ashes would strengthen one's physique. This effect was slowly revealed, but the effects of the berserk blood spirit pill were too obvious. After a single pill entered his stomach, he would be able to advance by a subminor level. Under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han refined and comprehended the berserk blood spirit pill for 3 days. His cultivation level had already leaped into the middle stage of the medium extreme, but his comprehension of cultivation level was still slightly lacking. After all, it had only been 3 years. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more difficult it would be to comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth. He cultivated in seclusion for a few more days, completely stabilizing his cultivation level. Only then did he return to Wolf Fong City. Another few months passed, and he had to go to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They had reunited after a long time, but the number of times they could meet was limited. Whether it was him or the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, they both greatly missed each other. He went to the Purple Moon Army and said some sweet nothings to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. However, when Ling Han wanted to be lovey-dovey with her, he was sent flying with a slap from the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Sure enough, this fierce woman hadn't changed at all. Ling Han gritted his teeth. This fierce woman was thin-skinned, and when his lips came close, she was so nervous that she involuntarily sent a slap flying. Because of this, he was unable to realize his desire to kiss her. This fierce woman, when I advance into the consummate level, how am I going to deal with you? Ling Han muttered as he left the army camp. However, his current strength was truly inferior to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maidens. Moreover, it was impossible for him to fight a battle of life and death, and rely on his physique to exhaust her to death. Thus, he was completely helpless against the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Yo, isn't this little Han? Why does your complexion look as if you've eaten 100 flies? Rabbit and the old ginseng silently appeared and began to tease Ling Han. Ling Han's expression darkened, and he threatened, "If you don't shut up, I'll turn you two into rabbit ginseng soup." Rabbit and the old ginseng laughed merrily, and were naturally not afraid of Ling Han's threat. They put their arms around each other's shoulders, looking like the best of friends. However, Rabbit would occasionally drool at the old ginseng, so he knew that one of them could disappear at any moment. The old ginseng boasted shamelessly, "Little Han, do you want Grandpa Ginseng to teach you a few moves? I guarantee that you'll be able to soak her every time." Ling Han sneered. The old ginseng's methods were probably all swindling. "Oh, that's right, Grandpa Ginseng is about to break through to the Sun-Moon tier, so I've specially come to look for you to protect me." The old ginseng's expression became serious. Ling Han shook his head. He had thought that these two had come to look for him because they had found their conscience, but it turned out that they were about to undergo heavenly tribulation. Only then did they think of him. However, this was fine. He could freeload off a tribulation. "All right, let's go." The three of them went to a more desolate place, and the old ginseng began to undergo heavenly tribulation. He was very confident that he could survive the heavenly tribulation, but his vitality would definitely be greatly depleted after the tribulation. If he happened to be targeted by someone at this time, who wouldn't want to eat godly medicine? Though the two-realm battlefield had a rule that the weapons had to be aimed at outsiders, who would know if he secretly killed a few people outside of Wolf Fong City? Most importantly, the commotion caused by the heavenly tribulation was too great and would attract the attention of many people in the surroundings. Boom, the old ginseng released the suppression of his cultivation level. Instantly, thunderclouds surged and gathered from all directions. Meanwhile, the old ginseng was undergoing heavenly tribulation, and Ling Han took the initiative to enter the heavenly tribulation. He freeloaded off a tribulation to undergo heavenly tribulation, and took the opportunity to analyze the might of heaven and earth. This brat is really a freak. Rabbit ran far away. He didn't want to be swept up by the heavenly tribulation at all. Only a freak like Ling Han would take the initiative to provoke a heavenly tribulation. Chapter 1278. Half a day later, the tribulation cloud dissipated. The old ginseng had successfully transcended the heavenly tribulation. Although his battle prowess wasn't very strong, the strongest aspect of the wood spirit was his life force. Thus, even though he had been riddled with wounds after transcending the heavenly tribulation, he had quickly recovered a portion of them. He was covered in wounds, yet his aura had become tens of thousands of times more powerful than before. The difference between the consummate level of the mountain river tier and the low extreme of the sun-moon tier was like the difference between heaven and earth. The old ginseng has advanced to the 5th level, so it's definitely more nutritious now. Rabbit was drooling, wishing it could gnaw on the old ginseng like it was a carrot. This was no ordinary godly medicine, but a ginseng king that had developed intelligence and absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to cultivate. It was many times more nourishing than ordinary level 5 godly medicine. Our luck is not bad. There's actually a ginseng king undergoing tribulation. Creatures of the 5 elements are favored by heaven and earth. The ginseng king is filled with life essence. Consuming one will not only increase one's cultivation, but even extend one's lifespan by tens of thousands of years. There was a long laugh, and 7 men appeared one after another. They were all at the sun-moon tier, but their specific cultivation levels varied, ranging from the low extreme to the consummate level. Thus, there was a large age gap between them. Some were middle-aged men full of heroic spirit, while others were white-haired old men. However, talent was also required to climb the path of martial art. Those who were old might not necessarily have a high realm, and those who were young might not necessarily have a low realm or even a young age. Ling Han had also just completed his tribulation. He swept an eye over the 7 people, and a smile involuntarily tugged at the corners of his lips. Ever since he had encountered the people of Heaven's Sword Palace here by chance, he had received a hint from them, and he had also learned to see if others had any special emblems on them. The 7 of them were clearly a group, so the possibility of them belonging to the same faction was very high. With a glance, he immediately discovered that all 7 of them had a sword embroidered on their sleeves. Heaven's Sword Palace. In truth, this was also reasonable. After all, the Heaven's Sword Palace had lost a very important treasure map here, and they had already sent out a group of people to search for it. Since the whereabouts of this group of people were unknown, and their fates were unknown, the Heaven's Sword Palace would naturally send out even more people to search for it. The 7 people from Heaven's Sword Palace also looked at Ling Han's group of 3. They felt that their combination was too strange. Human, demonic beast, and with spirit. That human? A middle-aged man looked at Ling Han with a puzzled look. To think that this young man would look somewhat familiar. Ancestral Master Lu, is there something wrong with this human? Someone beside him asked. Ling Han. The middle-aged man suddenly clapped his hands and called out. Ling Han. The other 6 people from the Heaven's Sword Palace were very confused. They seemed to have never heard of this name before. The main culprit who split open the skies of the vast lands. The middle-aged man said through gritted teeth, his eyes practically spitting flames. Forces of Sun-Moon tier were completely insignificant in the immortal realm. The 5 sects had only obtained this small world, the lower realm, by chance, and treated it as a precious treasure, managing it for millions of years. Moreover, their harvest was also very impressive. Every 10,000 years, they would obtain a few realm pills, which allowed many Sun-Moon tier elites to appear in the 5 sects. If one compared the 5 sects to other Sun-Moon tier forces, it would be clear. Whether it was the number or the ratio of Sun-Moon tier elites, the 5 sects were much higher. This was all the effect of the realm pill. However, as Ling Han split open the skies, the realm pill became like a fleeting cloud, only a memory. This naturally caused the higher-ups of the 5 sects to hate Ling Han to the bone, and viewed him as a target that had to be eliminated. The problem was, after splitting open the skies, who knew where the vast lands had taken Ling Han to? No matter how powerful the 5 sects were, they couldn't use it. Moreover, the concoction of the realm pill was too harmful. Only the true higher-ups and those who had been sent to the small world knew this secret. Thus, most people of the 5 sects completely didn't know who Ling Han was. However, after Ling Han split open the skies, the 5 sects listed Ling Han as their number 1 enemy, and ordered their disciples to search for Ling Han's whereabouts all over the immortal realm. They were quite determined to kill him no matter how far he was. Thus, when they heard that Ling Han was the person who split open the skies, The remaining 6 people all showed killing intent at the same time. Ancestor Lu, are you mistaken? A white-haired old man asked. Though he looked old, he was actually only in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so his lifespan was short, so he naturally aged quickly. The others nodded. Ling Han had only split open the skies and come to the immortal realm for a few years, so how could he have broken through to the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? This was too exaggerated. Could it be that he had eaten a super divine pill? That's right, it must be that brat, the middle-aged man said hatefully. He had seen the image of Ling Han's divine sense before, and what he wanted was that kind of aura. This was the aura of a cultivator, and it was extremely difficult to change. This person's surname was Lu, and his name was Lu Shi. He was an orphan taken in by the Heaven's Sword Palace. Back then, he was ranked 10th, so he was called Lu Shi. 3 million years had passed, and he had also become a big shot of the Heaven's Sword Palace from a small orphan. That's just right. We'll kill this brat today, and then take a ginseng king. The others all smirked coldly. Take your sister, the old ginseng immediately shouted. Want to eat your grandpa ginseng? You guys are still too early. 8 million years old, little Han, beat him up for me. There's no need to be merciful, and if you beat him to death, Grandpa Ginseng will take responsibility for you. Though he said this, he was continuously retreating. With his small arms and legs, how could he dare to fight so many elites? Ling Han directly unsheathed his sword and said, since everyone knows my background, we can save a lot of nonsense. Let's fight. Mere ant. Lu Shi showed an expression of disdain. In the eyes of the elites of the immortal realm, the people of a small world were naturally ants. In fact, they couldn't even be considered ants. Otherwise, how could they have refined the people of the lower realm into realm pills without even blinking? And now, an ant actually dared to challenge him. He really didn't know what to do. This brat's cultivation level was indeed astonishingly fast, but he was only in the medium extreme, after all. Even if you were a 5-star genius, so what? In front of him, you still wouldn't be a match for him. Kill him. He was disdainful to personally attack, and ordered the other 6 people. The 6 people accepted the order, and all leaped out, closing in on Ling Han. Ling Han's hands were itching to fight. He had now advanced into the middle stage of the medium extreme, and his battle prowess had soared to the peak stage of the high extreme. Added with the divine demon sword in hand, his battle prowess was completely on par with elites in the early stage of the consummate level, and this did not take into account the suppression of heaven's might on his opponents, as well as a powerful killing tool like the misty soul-capturing flower. If Lu Shi didn't attack, these 6 people were actually just a plate of appetizers in front of him. Ling Han charged out, waving the divine demon sword. Sword shadows intertwined, and killing intent sword. Lu Shi's expression instantly changed. The members of the Heaven Sword Palace were basically all sword cultivators, and he was also an elite of the sword. When he felt the might of this strike, he couldn't help but be stunned, and knew that he had severely underestimated Ling Han's strength. Retreat! He hurriedly called out, and his figure shot out. More refreshing reading on mobile. Chapter 1280. Lu Shi was protected by the pagoda, and Ling Han couldn't slash through it in a short while, so there was naturally no need to waste time. Do you have some strange god tool? Ling Han sized up the other person from Heaven's Sword Palace curiously. That person wet his pants in fright. At first, he thought that with Lu Shi making a move, he could easily take down Ling Han, but the result was far beyond his expectations. Lu Shi was actually forced by Ling Han to the point where he could only defend himself, and he was targeted by Ling Han. In this instant, he broke out in cold sweat like rain, and felt his legs go soft as if he couldn't even stand steadily. Becoming one with the tool was a secret technique exclusive to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and only those who had advanced into this tier would be taught by the sect. Thus, he couldn't take out a powerful god tool, and even if he could, his cultivation level was still a bit low, so what right did he have to stand against Ling Han? You dare! Lu Shi's voice traveled out from within the pagoda, and 2 divine swords flew out of his hands, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han brandished his sword to parry, and shot out one flash of sword chi after another, dispersing all of Lu Shi's attacks. However, the other person from Heaven's Sword Palace also took the chance to flee. He really wet his pants in fright, and his legs flew wildly. He only hated that he didn't have a few more legs, and that he couldn't flee fast enough. Can you escape? Ling Han shook his head and used the annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiao, a sword swiftly streaked past like a stream of light, quickly catching up to that person. Pu, an arrow pierced through that person's chest and blew him into two halves. However, the vitality of Sun Moon tier cultivators was too strong. Even if their bodies were split into two halves, they still didn't die. Their hands crawled, and their feet rubbed against each other. The two halves of their bodies were about to be pieced back together and reattached with origin power. After a few years of nurturing, who knew, they might become a good man again. So troublesome. Ling Han drew his bow again. Don't even think about it. Lu Shi roared. He waved the pagoda and moved it to envelop Ling Han. Ling Han turned the arrow and shot it towards Lu Shi. Xiao, the arrow of origin power, was so fast that even Sun Moon tier elites would have a hard time tracking it. Puff! This arrow landed on Lu Shi's left shoulder. If he hadn't dodged in time, this arrow would definitely have pierced through his heart, and even if he didn't die, he would be severely wounded. Lu Shi turned pale with fright. How could this arrow be so fast and so powerful? Even his protective origin power was unable to block it. Although he still had many ultimate moves that he had yet to display, he had already lost all will to fight. This young man gave him an oppressive feeling that he could not resist. He had an ominous premonition in his heart that even the sect's strongest expert might not be able to take down this young man. But if one doesn't work, what about 2 or 3? Even gods had a limit to their power. As long as they exceeded this limit, no matter how strong they were, they would not be able to escape death. He had already made up his mind to immediately report the matter of Ling Han's arrival on the Cloud Apex planet, and then mobilize the Heaven's Sword Palace. No, mobilize all the elites of the 5 sects to surround and kill Ling Han. Otherwise, with the freakish speed of this brat's advancement, he would probably be able to stand on equal footing with the 5 sects in a few years' time. Then he would never be able to suppress them. He was also a person who could let go of things. Immediately, he gritted his teeth and turned to leave. The treasured tower spun lightly, and streaks of flames descended from it, forming a powerful protective layer. Ancestor Lu. Ancestor Lu. The remaining member of the Heaven's Sword Palace called out in despair. He had barely pieced his body back together, but he would need at least 30 minutes to recuperate before he could use origin power to forcefully piece his broken body back together and recover his ability to move. But now, Lu Shi had abandoned him, which meant that he would definitely be alone and without help. Huh, who told you guys to want to eat Grandpa Ginseng? Eat Grandpa's treasured ginseng foot. The old ginseng began to jump again. The powerful enemy had fled, and the remaining one was only on the brink of death. He was naturally unafraid, and rushed forward to kick him wildly. That pitiful person had originally been in the high extreme of the Sun Moon tier. In his peak condition, he could suppress the old ginseng with a single hand, but now he could only be kicked violently by the old ginseng. It was only a few kicks, and he spat out a lot of blood. He was stomped to death by the old ginseng. Fuck, Grandpa Ginseng is too awesome. I've only just advanced into the Sun Moon tier, and I've already killed a powerful enemy in the consummate level. The old ginseng felt extremely proud of himself. This must be celebrated with a 100-year-old doo-doo. True enough, he drew out a pink doo-doo and took a deep breath, his expression one of intoxication. The freak, Ling Han and Rabbit both kicked out at the same time and sent the old ginseng flying with a kick. However, Lu Shi had fled. Ling Han thought for a moment and gave up on the idea of chasing after him. The defenses of that treasured tower of the others was very astonishing. Even if he used the divine demon sword, he would need a very long time to slice through it, but the other would not sit still and allow him to break through his defenses. After all, this place was not far from Wolf Fong City. Fine, I'll lure the snake out and have them surround me. I'll take the opportunity to kill a few more, Ling Han said in his mind. It was uncertain who was the hunter and who was the prey. At this stage, my abilities will advance by leaps and bounds every 3 months. If I have another half a year, I will truly have the confidence to kill those at the peak stage of the consummate level with my sword. If he faced those at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier now, he could only rely on the misty soul-capturing flower to suppress them. However, as his cultivation level became higher and higher, he would be able to kill his enemies with his own abilities. This was also in line with Ling Han's Dao. What he pursued was personal strength. If I change to another place, who knows, I might be able to pick up a few realm spirit stones. I came here by opening the sky, and have received the blessing of heaven and earth. My luck is much stronger than that of ordinary people. To Ling Han, the accumulation of origin power that he had obtained through cultivation could not possibly compare to that of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. Thus, this was purely a waste of time. All he did was concoct alchemical pills, and then wander around this vast two-realm battlefield. He would kill netherworld beings to accumulate merit points, and at the same time, see if he could pick up any realm spirit stones. His luck was really not bad. He actually managed to pick up a few realm spirit stones. However, they were only the size of a little finger, and their value could not even reach 1% of that of the Great Realm Spirit Stone. Even this luck has a time when it's used up. He sighed ruefully. Speaking of which, after Lu Shi returned to Wolffang City, he gathered the members of the Heaven Sword Palace to prevent them from encountering Ling Han and being killed one by one. At the same time, he contacted the Heaven Sword Palace and reported the matter of Ling Han. He emphasized repeatedly that they definitely could not underestimate Ling Han just because he had come from a small world, and had only cultivated for a few decades. This enemy had to be dealt with his full strength. Otherwise, if he was allowed to grow, he would be the death of the Heaven Sword Palace. After receiving this report, a fierce debate took place within the Heaven Sword Palace. A portion of them agreed with Lu Shi's suggestion and wanted to join forces with the 5 sects to hunt down Ling Han. There was also a portion that thought that Lu Shi was exaggerating. It hadn't even been 10 years since Ling Han split open the skies, and the other party already had the strength to threaten the 5 sects. What a joke! 10 years, time was not even enough to cause an immortal level cultivator's cultivation level to increase even the slightest bit, yet Ling Han had not only advanced from the Shattering Void tier to the immortal level, but also reached the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. In the end, it still alarmed an authoritative figure who had been in seclusion for a long time, and he decisively suppressed the dispute between the two sides. He ordered the Heaven Sword Palace to immediately summon the other 4 sects and send out all their elites to surround and kill Ling Han. Putting everything else aside, just based on Ling Han's sin of opening the sky, he was going to kill him. Chapter 1281. The higher-ups of the 5 sects sat together, discussing how to deal with Ling Han. 5 Sun-Moon tier forces, even the 5 great sects that could be ranked at the top of this echelon, actually joined forces to kill an ant in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier from a small world. This was unimaginable to them in the past. But now, they were all determined to kill him. That despicable brat was able to split open the sky, so he must have obtained a great opportunity. Otherwise, he couldn't have risen in a short 20 years. This has broken the rules of martial art. That's right. He can accommodate the power of the nation of the whole lower realm, which has a terrifying requirement for his physique. He must have obtained a precious treasure in the lower realm, which is why he advanced so quickly in the immortal realm. The lower realm is not simple. At least, the 12 generals under the Heavenly River King entered this small world, and left behind a supreme inheritance. Unfortunately, the small world suppresses power, and we can't forcibly open the 12 palaces even if we enter. Maybe that brat obtained the inheritance of the Heavenly River King? Gasp! The members of the 5 sects could not remain calm. They actually didn't know who the Heavenly River King was, only knowing that he was an incredibly powerful being. Even the 12 generals were brave and invincible. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly River King. No, even if it was only the inheritance of the 12 generals, then they could at least match an eternal river tier, right? Who would be willing to be under someone else? Especially cultivators, who were all proud and arrogant. We must capture that despicable brat. Since he came all the way to die, how can we not fulfill his wish? Send out all the elites. The 5 sects soon reached a consensus and sent out all the elites of their sections. Furthermore, to prevent any sect from monopolizing the treasures, every team to search for Ling Han was a mix of the 5 sections. Each sect sent out 2 people, and each team had 10 people. Of course, even the Sun-Moon tier elites of the 5 sects were limited. With so many people thrown into the vast 2-realm battlefield, it was not like a drop of water falling into the ocean, but in reality, it was not much different. Added with the fact that Ling Han would occasionally enter the Black Tower to concoct pills, the chances of finding Ling Han dropped drastically. Ling Han actually didn't plan on hiding. He very generously searched for enemies and realm spirit stones in the 2-realm battlefield, but he just couldn't find anyone from the 5 sects. What could he do? Another 3 months were about to pass. Ling Han was both looking forward to it and a little scared. Very soon, he would be able to consume the Berserk Blood Spirit pill to increase his strength again. However, before that he would first have to be burned by the immortal flames. Just thinking about this made the corners of his mouth twitch. Ding ding ding. The sounds of battle came from up ahead. Ling Han wasn't the type to meddle in other people's business, but this was the 2-realm battlefield. What if the living beings of the netherworld were fighting with the martial artists of the immortal realm? He immediately rushed over, but when he saw the 2 sides fighting, he couldn't help but shake his head. This was not a conflict between the god realm and the netherworld. Rather, it was a conflict between humans. Obviously, this was either a vendetta or a conflict of interests. When it came to benefits, it was even simpler. A realm spirit stone should have appeared here, and that was why the 2 sides had a conflict. However, the strength of both sides was very strong, and they were both at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. When Ling Han suddenly appeared, both sides paused slightly. However, when they discovered that Ling Han was alone, and his cultivation level was only at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, they naturally didn't care and continued to battle. Stop, stop. However, after only a few moves, one side suddenly called for a halt. Humph, you guys were the ones who started the fight, so what do you want now? The other side asked. I'll let you have that realm spirit stone, the person who called for a halt said. This surprised the other side. To be honest, they were at a disadvantage, but if the other side wanted to kill all of them, they would have to pay a huge price. Thus, the other side had been wearing them down all this time, wearing them down until they lost their fighting spirit, and voluntarily handed over the realm spirit stone in exchange for a chance to escape. However, they had never thought that the other side would actually call a halt at this time. They retreated but saw that the other side didn't move. When they carefully ran far enough, they hurriedly ran with all their strength, and soon disappeared. A middle-aged man with a sword on his back said calmly, I've searched far and wide for you, yet you've delivered yourself to me. A middle-aged man with a sword on his back said calmly, his eyes fixed on Ling Han, exuding a frightening coldness. The intelligence was right, medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. A middle-aged woman continued. Brat, kneel down and accept your death, and I can give you a quick death. This was an old woman with a stooped figure, and she held a walking stick in her hand. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, What a coincidence, I was just about to look for you guys. He found the symbol of the Heaven's Sword Palace on the sleeves of the 2 people, and the remaining 8 people all had the same symbol. It was very easy to deduce that they came from the Cloud Phoenix sect, the Absolute Saber sect, the Blue Thunder sect, and the Earth Dragon sect respectively. Humph, I've always wondered what this brat who opened the sky looked like. Did he eat the bile of a true dragon or the heart of a true phoenix to actually be so audacious? The old woman lifted the walking stick, and then gave it a sudden knock. Instantly, a crack appeared on the ground, rapidly extending towards Ling Han. And at the same time that the ground split open, endless darkness actually appeared below, turning into multiple snake-like things. These were not snakes, but rather earth dragons, or in other words, earthworms. Disgusting! Ling Han humphed, and brandished his sword in a slash. Tens of thousands of sword shadows streaked past, and these earth dragons were all cut into pieces, turning back into gray shadows. With this strike, the 10 people of the 5 sects all looked astonished. Although the old woman did not use her full power, Ling Han was still relaxed, showing off his strength. This young man could not be underestimated. Hee, everyone, help me hold the line, and don't let this junior escape. Wait for me to capture him. The man with a sword on his back took a step forward. He drew his sword, and suddenly, sword intent burst forth, its sharpness tearing the air apart. This was an elite of the Heaven Sword Palace. Sword cultivators indeed had astonishing destructive power. Among the 5 sects, whether it was the Earth Dragon sect, the Cloud Phoenix sect, or the Blue Thunder sect, they were actually not pure humans, but half-humans, which was the offspring of the union between a divine beast and a human. They were stronger than ordinary immortals, especially when their bloodline showed signs of atavism. Their strength was not just a little bit stronger. For example, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had only entered the immortal realm for 10,000 years, and she had already reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Unfortunately, limited by the level of the 5 sects, they could not obtain any further cultivation techniques, and could only step at the consummate level. If there was no special opportunity, they could only stay at this level for the rest of their lives. However, the Heaven Sword Palace could be on equal footing with these 3 sects, and from one aspect, this proved that the strength of sword cultivators could make up for the lack of bloodline. Moreover, this elite had reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and merely pointed the tip of his sword at Ling Han, and he already felt as if his skin was about to be torn apart. His sword intent was really terrifying. Too powerful. More refreshing. Chapter 1282. Cultivation level didn't equate to battle prowess. Ling Han believed that this man who pointed a sword at him was at least a 3-star genius, or even a 4-star genius. At present, he definitely couldn't match such an elite. In reality, his battle prowess was only at the peak of the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Taking into account Heaven's might weakening the opponent by a subminor level, he could match an opponent in the early stage of the consummate level. Of course, if the Misty Soul Capturing Flower could be effective, that would be another matter. But in a head-on confrontation, Ling Han had no doubt that he would be sliced in two by the other's sword. Never doubt the destructive power of a sword cultivator. Ling Han's current physique was only slightly above level 7 godly metal, and hadn't reached level 8 yet. And even if it reached level 8, if the other's battle prowess could really jump 3 to 4 stars, then it could still cause considerable damage to level 8 godly metal. Ling Han directly unleashed the Misty Soul Capturing Flower. Instantly, the spirits of the 10 people present were seized, but it was only an instant, and the eyes of the 4 elites of Heaven's Sword Palace and Absolute Saber sect became clear. Having formed Sword Heart and Saber Heart, reaching the level of illumination, their spirits were sturdy, and it was too difficult to shake them. This was also why sword cultivators and saber cultivators were difficult to deal with. They only lived for killing, and their 7 emotions had long been severed, so it was extremely difficult to shake their divine sense. Of course, this was also because these 4 people's cultivation level was high enough. Otherwise, the Misty Soul Capturing Flower would still have a miraculous effect. Die! A sword slashed over, and the 4 suns and moons simultaneously released brilliant light, rippling with terrifying power. Seeing that the Misty Soul Capturing Flower was ineffective, Ling Han knew that things were bad. He hurriedly put away the demonic flower, and used the star plucking step, beginning to break out of the encirclement. Where do you think you're going? The remaining 3 people of Heaven's Sword Palace and Absolute Saber sect also raised their swords and slashed over at the same time, and the remaining 6 people also regained clarity after the Misty Soul Capturing Flower was put away. Their expressions all changed and they all launched attacks. This brat actually had such a mystical item on him. If it weren't for the fact that he had 4 companions who had formed Sword Heart and Saber Heart, they probably would have fallen for it, and might even die here. Once they thought that they might die in the hands of a junior carelessly, their humiliation turned into anger, and they wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into 1,000 pieces. Ling Han did not prolong the fight and used all his strength to break through. Do you think you can escape? The 10 great elites all humphed coldly. Even the weakest among them was at the early stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. If the 10 of them joined forces, they would be able to kill any cultivator at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, what more a cultivator at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Hong, all kinds of attacks interweaved, incomparably brilliant. Peng, peng, peng. Ling Han was struck again and again, but after suffering a few heavy blows, he finally tore through the encirclement and successfully escaped. There were several bloody holes on his body, but he didn't seem to care. He said, "I'll remember this debt for now. I'll make you pay for it one by one." The 10 people from the 5 sects were all dumbstruck. He didn't even fucking die? If it were them, any one of them would have definitely died. However, a cultivator at the medium extreme had actually survived, and was even threatening them coldly. This caused a chill to rise up in their hearts. This kid can't be allowed to live. You can only die here today, what future will there be? The 10 of them moved together, determined to kill Ling Han. This was not only to eliminate a powerful enemy in the future, but also to uncover the great secret on Ling Han. They definitely did not believe that a lowly commoner from a small world could rely on his own strength to reach this step. There had to be an astonishing opportunity hidden on him, and perhaps it was the inheritance of the Heavenly River King. Ling Han humphed and used the star-plucking step, sprinting at full speed. The 10 people from the 5 sects hurriedly gave chase, but they discovered that they actually could not catch up to Ling Han. Not only did they not catch up, but the distance between them was continuously widening. Such a fast movement technique definitely can't last long. Chase, we must eliminate this disaster. If this brat is not eliminated, we will not be able to eat or sleep in peace. But Ling Han soon disappeared without a trace. The 10 people were helpless and could only split up to search for him. After Ling Han escaped, he had already hidden inside the Black Tower. He did not enter the Black Tower immediately. Firstly, he did not want to expose the secret of the Black Tower, and secondly, he did not want to rely too much on the Black Tower and hide inside the moment there was danger. He channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, and the wounds on his body immediately healed at a visible speed. In fact, his wounds were very serious. Those were 10 elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and some of them had not only reached the peak stage of the consummate level, but were even 3-star or 4-star geniuses. This strike had torn his flesh and blood, and even his godly bones had almost been broken. He touched his neck. That elite from the Heaven Sword Palace had almost beheaded him with a single strike. However, with the indestructible true fluid, the wound had already healed, but it still made Ling Han's heart palpitate. If it were not for the fact that his godly bones were hard enough, his head would definitely have been separated by now. He was in the Black Tower, but his vision was not affected, and he discovered that there was currently someone chasing in this direction. It was that old woman from the Earth Dragon sect. Although she was leaning on a walking stick, her speed was extraordinarily fast, as if she could shrink the ground to inches. A single step was more than 300 meters. He was alone. Ling Han smirked coldly. It just so happened that he had suffered such a huge loss, and was just about to vent his anger. The old woman suddenly stopped. She had the bloodline of the Earth Dragon, and was very sensitive to odors. She could faintly smell Ling Han's aura, but it suddenly disappeared when she reached here. Strange, could it be that he had escaped into the ground? She released a long howl, wanting to call the others over. However, it was at this moment that a sword light suddenly flashed, carrying with it a boundless killing intent, slashing toward her neck. What? The old woman was incredibly shocked. There was clearly no one here, so where had this sword light come from? She barely managed to raise her walking stick to meet the sword light, and when she turned around, she saw that this sword was held in the hands of a young man. It was Ling Han. She was both shocked and furious. She had not thought that not only did Ling Han not flee, but he actually dared to ambush her here. However, his concealment method was too good, and even she had not discovered him. At this moment, she was also completely focused on sensing Ling Han's aura that had disappeared, so it could be said that her mental defenses were at their weakest. This sword strike was like an avalanche, and it was also like the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting. It was indescribably terrifying. Peng, her walking stick, still managed to block the sword, but because she had moved hastily, she did not have enough power and was instantly sent flying by the sword. However, she had also bought some time, and her figure hurriedly retreated. Ling Han closed in. Because the two of them were too close, there was no space for him to swing his sword, so he simply let the divine demon's sword leave his hand and let it attack on its own. Meanwhile, he swung his fists repeatedly at the old woman. The old woman was in a rush to save her life, and as she protected herself with her hands, she hurriedly retreated. She did not have the time to think about how Ling Han, who had been heavily injured just then, had instantly become unscathed. At this moment, there was an endless howl, and the other 9 people were quickly rushing over. The old woman was overjoyed. She only needed to hold on for a little longer, and when the reinforcements arrived, the situation would change, and it would be Ling Han's turn to desperately escape. You have no chance. Ling Han smirked coldly, and the misty soul-capturing flowers suddenly appeared. The old woman was shocked and hurriedly wanted to close her eyes, but this demonic flower affected divine sense, so it did not matter whether she closed her eyes or not. In the instant that she closed her eyes, she saw that there were 9 figures hurriedly rushing over from all directions. But this was also the last time she would see them in her life. Peng Ling Han's punch caused the old woman's head to explode, and even her divine sense was destroyed along with it. He cast a cold glance at the 9 members of the 5 sects, and unhesitatingly started to sprint. In an instant, he had infinitely widened the distance between him and the 9 of them. Chapter 1284. Ling Han's eyes swept over it, and immediately revealed a sliver of killing intent. This was a being of the netherworld. However, he didn't make a move. This little beast had just advanced into the immortal level, and was extremely weak. Moreover, it didn't seem to have developed intelligence. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come over when there were clearly 2 Sun-Moon tier elites. This little beast looked like a cat, and had snow-white fur all over its body. It was soft, shiny, and exuded a silver luster. Its appearance was the type that people couldn't help but like at first sight. No wonder even someone as cold and aloof as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. "Gio, Gio!" The little beast called out at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, drooling even more happily. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden said to Ling Han, "Give it a portion too." "Didn't you realize that it's a being of the netherworld?" Ling Han asked. "But it's so cute." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't resist at all. The little beast made a low cry, and was very cute. Ling Han sighed, and could only draw out another bowl and pour a portion for the little beast. Then he placed it in front of him and said, "Little guy, eat and run. A glutton like you should stay obediently in the netherworld. Didn't you come to the immortal realm to fill someone's stomach?" The little beast immediately rolled up its tongue and began to drink the soup. Perhaps it was too delicious, but its head moved forward more and more. As a result, it lost its center of gravity, and its 2 hind legs were raised. Ling Han was shocked. It had to act cute even while eating. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden probably couldn't stand it anymore. He turned around, and as expected, the love in the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes was already overflowing. The little beast drank the soup very quickly. Being able to cultivate to the mountain river tier, how could it not have intelligence? It immediately chirped at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, as if it knew that begging her was the most effective. Sure enough, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden turned her eyes to Ling Han, her eyes full of pleading. Ling Han sighed, and had no choice but to bring out another bowl. One bowl after another, this little beast's appetite was a little shocking. Ling Han couldn't help but be moved. One had to know that the ingredients he used were in consideration of his and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's cultivation level. If it was given to a mountain river tier, it could eat, but definitely wouldn't eat much. If the little critter ate so fiercely, it would directly explode and die. But in reality, this little beast was still alive and kicking. It was acting cute and acting spoiled. There were no signs of it bursting. Strange, after finishing half of the meat soup by itself, this little beast was finally satisfied. It ran to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's feet, and began to wag its tail happily, continuing to act cute to the end. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was extremely compassionate. She picked up the little beast, combed its fur, and even gave it a massage, which angered Ling Han. He had never seen this fierce woman treat him so gently before. As if sensing Ling Han's hostile gaze, the little beast curled up its little paw and retreated into the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's bosom. "Don't scare it," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden warned Ling Han. "You eat my food, drink my water, and now you want to steal my wife?" Ling Han glared at the little beast, and the little beast was not to be outdone. It glared back at Ling Han while rubbing its little head against the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. It obviously knew which one it should curry favor with. "A little monster of the netherworld. I'll eat it sooner or later," Ling Han said fiercely. "Jiu." The little beast acted spoiled, looking as if it had been badly frightened. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden once again gave Ling Han a stern warning, causing Ling Han to sigh ruefully. He definitely had to quickly increase his cultivation level, or even his wife would have to do the dirty work for him. Right at this moment, a light cracking sound rang out. Ling Han couldn't help but turn his gaze towards the egg that he had kept for who knew how long. Now, whenever he had time, he would take it out to bask in the sun, and that sound just now had come from the eggshell. There was a crack, another sound rang out, and the first crack appeared. Ling Han was overjoyed. Was this guy finally going to hatch? This was the descendant of the azure flame eagle. In truth, it wasn't of much help to Ling Han anymore, but after raising it by his side for so many days, he was still very much looking forward to a new life breaking out of its shell. Crack. The azure flame eagle inside continued to peck, and the eggshell cracked bit by bit. Finally, the head of a little bird poked out. This time, it didn't peck anymore. Instead, it opened its beak and began to gnaw on the eggshell. Very soon, it had gnawed out a large circle. This eggshell seemed to be very delicious because the little bird had already gnawed out a gap that could allow it to escape, but it had no intention of stopping at all. It was still gnawing continuously, causing even Ling Han to feel a slight urge to break off a piece and have a taste. As a glutton, he felt a great deal of pressure. Ling Han, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and the little beast were all silent. Only when the little bird had gnawed on the eggshell until there wasn't a single bit left did the little guy struggle to stand on its tiptoes and look around blankly. It first tilted its head and stared at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for a while, then stared at the little beast and finally at Ling Han. Then pa. It ran over with its 2 little feet and leaned against his leg, squatting down to rest. Did it think he was a bird's mother? Hey, putting aside the fact that he's a man, how does he look like a bird? Fuck, what's with your eyes? Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was rocking back and forth in laughter. This would be the best material to make fun of Ling Han in the future, and it could be said that it would last a lifetime. Ling Han shook his head and sent the little bird into the Black Tower. He sharply discovered that this azure flame eagle's future would far surpass that of its mother. It was said that the azure flame eagle had a sliver of the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Azure Lon. If it could awaken, this little bird would be very useful. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Amidst a cry of surprise, a few people walked over, and all looked at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, their faces filled with fanatical worship. These were the disciples of the 5 sects. In the 5 sects, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was definitely a legendary figure. It had only been 10,000 years since she arrived in the immortal realm, and she had already reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Who knew how many people worshipped her as their idol? However, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had gone into seclusion a long time ago and had only left behind a stunning legend. Thus, seeing the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden here naturally made those people excited. Ling Han. But when they saw the other person beside their idol, their expressions all changed drastically. This was a demon. In a short few months, there had already been a considerable number of elites of the 5 sects who had died at the hands of Ling Han, and this person was even more so the sinner who had opened the sky. According to the 5 sects, the lower realm was a small world that they had managed for a few million years, and had produced an astonishing amount of wealth. Now, because of Ling Han, it had disappeared forever. Thus, regardless of whether they knew the truth or not, the disciples of the five sects all hated Ling Han to the core. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, this person is Ling Han. It's dangerous, hurry up and leave him. Someone called out to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, afraid that she still did not know Ling Han's true identity and would be injured by Ling Han. Yet the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said calmly, I have already severed all ties with the Cloud Phoenix sect. The various matters of the five sects have nothing to do with me anymore. She had long since repaid the kindness of the Cloud Phoenix sect for teaching her, and when the sect sold her to Xied Donglai, the little bit of relationship she had with the Cloud Phoenix sect had also vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, those disciples of the five sects were both shocked and furious. Just what kind of bewitching potion had Ling Han fed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden that she would actually renounce even her own sect? Chapter 1285. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, don't be bewitched by this demon, the disciples shouted as they sent out signals to inform the others to come over. The average strength of the five sects disciples was very strong. People like them had only cultivated for a few 100,000 years, yet they had all advanced into the Sun-Moon tier. This wasn't because they had awakened their bloodlines, but rather because they had ingested realm pills. Of course, these realm pills weren't complete, but rather diluted. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to divide them. Even so, it still caused the overall strength of the five sects to increase tremendously. They were practically no weaker than ordinary heavenly body tier forces. If they hadn't reached the Sun-Moon tier, they wouldn't have dared to come to the two-realm battlefield to surround and kill Ling Han. Mountain River tier was practically a death sentence. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden held Little Beast in her arms and said, "That's all I have to say. If you speak any more nonsense, I definitely won't be merciful." There was a sinister look in her eyes. Since her relationship with the five sects had already been severed, anyone who made a move against Ling Han would be making a move against her. Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, didn't you claim to be the widow of the Ling clan? Didn't you say that you only live for one person? A long laugh traveled over from afar. In the blink of an eye, a young man flew over at an incredible speed. He carried an ancient sword on his back, giving off an otherworldly aura. Ling Han's eyes narrowed as he glanced over. Sword Emperor 10,000 years ago, there were a total of 7 heaven-tier elites in the lower realm, and they were known as the rulers of the present age, and the Sword Emperor was ranked first, suppressing the setting Sun Saber Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. When they met again 10,000 years later, the Sword Emperor had already advanced into the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Although it wasn't as astonishing as the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maidens, it was still very, very exaggerated. While the realm pill was indeed impressive, the most important thing was still his natural talent. Otherwise, why would people who had cultivated for tens or hundreds of thousands of years more than him still be at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's expression didn't change as she looked at this old rival of hers, and she said, "What do I need you to meddle in?" As they spoke, a few more people rushed over. They were much stronger this time, and there was no lack of elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Hee, the Sword Emperor shook his head in disdain. You boast that you are as pure as ice and as clean as jade, but in the end, you still fell in love with another man. Ling Han naturally did not want his wife to be humiliated, even if it was a misunderstanding. He said, "Sword the Arch, it has been 10,000 years since we last met. Do you dare to fight?" Sword Emperor. Many people were confused. Who was this demon talking to? However, the Sword Emperor's heart skipped a beat. This title was something he had obtained in the small world, but the moment he entered the immortal realm, he very consciously took off this title and temporarily sealed it up, returning to his original name. Otherwise, if he were to call himself the Sword Emperor in the divine world, wouldn't he be attracting hatred? How did this kid know? Hold on, this brat is also called Ling Han, and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden didn't hesitate to turn against the sect for his sake. Could it be? He had a shocking guess in his heart, but there was still one doubt. If Ling Han was that person, How did he survive for 10,000 years? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he found the answer himself. Time source fluid. Since the elites of the 5 sects in the lower realm all relied on this to accumulate generation after generation, why couldn't Ling Han do the same? A very long time ago, the 5 sects had been attacked by Ma Duobao. At that time, their foundation had almost been destroyed, and all the time source fluid had been taken away. If Ling Han had obtained time source fluid through this channel, that would be a very reasonable explanation. You are Ling Han? The sword the arch stared at Ling Han. Ling Han knew what he meant and said, "Heh, in order to beg me to refine pills, I even secretly learned 3 of your sword techniques. I'm really sorry." With this, the sword the arch had no doubt that this Ling Han was not only a sinner who had come from opening the sky, but also the alchemy emperor from 10,000 years ago. No wonder his cultivation speed was so fast. With top-grade alchemical pills to take every day, how could it not be fast? I didn't expect you to be someone who died long ago. A sinister expression appeared on the sword Thearcha's face. If I had known that you would be such a great threat to the sect, I really should have killed you back then. 10,000 years ago, although Ling Han had been similar to him in terms of cultivation level, his battle prowess had been a joke. Zhang Heng, are you seeking death? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden flew into a rage, and her killing intent was even greater than the sword Thearcha's. The sword Thearcha's original name was Zhang Heng, and after coming to the immortal realm, he had been called Zhang Heng instead of the sword the arch. Wife, let me fight. Ling Han pressed down on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. He had long since wanted to battle the sword the arch and the setting sun saber emperor again. Right now, their cultivation level was still above his, so he wouldn't be bullying them. This caused his fighting spirit to soar. Be careful, he's a 4-star genius, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said in a low voice. The reason why she had stepped forward was because she didn't want Ling Han to fight the sword the arch. Ling Han's battle prowess was at the early stage of the consummate level at most, and he could rival those in the middle stage of the consummate level. Meanwhile, the sword the arch was in the late stage of the high extreme, and he was also a 4-star genius, so his battle prowess was roughly at the late stage of the consummate level. This meant that Ling Han would definitely be defeated. Ling Han nodded and said, "Don't worry, I can't defeat you at the moment. As for this guy, it'll be a piece of cake." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden rolled her eyes. This guy was really petty. Hadn't she only suppressed him a few times in the past? Was there a need to take it so seriously? Sword the arch, come, let's battle. Ling Han challenged the sword the arch to a battle. A nostalgic expression appeared on the sword Thearcha's face, and he said, "It's been a long time since I've been called the sword the arch. However, one day I'll make this title shine again." What great ambition! In the immortal realm, the titles of king, emperor, and emperor couldn't be used carelessly. This was because there were royal dynasties, majestic empires, and imperial empires. If you used these titles carelessly, it would be taboo. For example, if Zhang Heng called himself the sword the arch, that would be equivalent to placing himself in the position of eternal river tier. What would heavenly body tier elites think of this? A measly sun-moon tier wanted to ride on their heads? That was purely seeking death. Now, Zhang Heng said that he would make the title of sword the arch shine again one day. This meant that he was confident that he could advance to the eternal river tier. Just this ambition alone was worthy of admiration. Ling Han nodded. This was the sword the arch he knew. He said, "On account of our past friendship, if you lose, I hope that you can leave the Heaven Sword Palace and pursue your own Tao." We'll talk about that after you defeat me. Zhang Heng unsheathed his sword. A terrifying murderous aura instantly soared into the sky. His battle intent and sword intent fused together, transforming into a divine sword. It was as if it could even slice open the heavens. Ling Han sighed in his mind. In terms of sword Dao alone, Zhang Heng's attainments were indeed superior to his. This was because Zhang Heng was single-minded. Meanwhile, Ling Han cultivated too many things. Alchemy took up a large portion of his cultivation, and there were many other miscellaneous things as well. However, it was precisely because of these miscellaneous things that he had become who he was now. Ling Han didn't draw his divine demon sword. Instead, he clenched his hands into fists. Divine patterns appeared on his fists, causing them to expand endlessly. They were like mountains. I screwed up. He took the initiative to attack. Chapter 1286. Ling Han's fists danced in the air, and they were like two mountains smashing toward Zhang Heng. Hong, the fist hadn't even smashed down, but a terrifying aura overflowed, causing the sky to collapse and the nebula to lose color. The disciples of the five sects hurriedly fled in a sorry state. Even those in the low extreme of the sun-moon tier, and even those in the medium extreme and high extreme didn't dare to face this kind of iron fist head-on. They would be severely wounded if they were even grazed by it. Ling Han's physique was comparable to level 7 godly metal. In fact, it could even be slightly stronger. This kind of battle technique made full use of this unique trait of his, and developed his own advantages. Iron fist strikes, however, Zhang Heng was not the slightest bit alarmed. With a sweep of his sword, he slashed toward the sky. Shua, a streak of sword chi pierced through the air and slashed onto the two mountains. With a whing, Ling Han's fists were actually repelled. Strong in terms of strength, it was clear that Zhang Heng had the upper hand. His cultivation level was much higher than Ling Han's, and he was also a 4-star genius. Hence, Ling Han's 6-star strength was suppressed by 4 stars. Just 2 stars was not enough to make up for the difference in cultivation level. 10,000 years ago, you weren't even a match for me. Now, you still won't be a match for me, Zhang Heng said proudly as he charged forward with his sword. He did not walk the path of becoming one with his god tool. Firstly, he had not reached consummate level yet, and secondly, he was ambitious. He was not content with the sun-moon tier, and wanted to become a supreme elite of the eternal river tier. Thus, he was naturally unwilling to fuse his sun and moon into his god tool, and sever his own path of cultivation. Ling Han laughed heartily and said, I thought you were going to say that I'm no match for you now. If that's all you've got, then I'll cut off your head within 10 moves. Zhang Heng brandished his sword, and as he swung it, it seemed as if the power of heaven and earth had started to circulate in response to it as it pressed down on Ling Han. Ling Han nodded silently. In terms of sword Dao, Zhang Heng was indeed qualified to be called a sword emperor. He was very powerful. Only he's not weak. Ling Han's fists turned into fingers. Xiu xiu xiu. He kept flicking his fingers, which transformed into sharp sword chi that shot toward Zhang Heng. Thunderbolt sword art. Right now, even though the lightning sword technique had not reached great mastery, it should not be a problem to call it minor mastery. It possessed the speed of breaking rules, the strength of the great Tao, and a trace of the might of the heavenly tribulation. Even if he didn't slash out with the divine demon sword, it was still as if a true dragon had appeared, and it was filled with a domineering aura that could crush the world. Zhang Heng couldn't help but be moved. He was a sword cultivator, and his entire life had been devoted to the sword. He was infatuated with the way of the sword, and although Ling Han had merely flicked his fingers as a sword, he could still sense a boundless sword intent. This sword intent was far above his comprehension. He was astonished. It should be known that though he had lost the title of Sword Emperor, he was still incredibly proud in his heart. He believed that what he lacked was merely cultivation level. In a battle of equals, he was confident that he could kill any heavenly body tier or eternal river tier elite with his sword. But this kind of complacency crumbled in front of Ling Han's sword intent. The person who could not be considered a match for him in the past had actually surpassed him in the way of the sword. He refused to accept this. Zhang Heng roared as he unleashed his sword Dao to its fullest. Sword chi flew through the air, transforming into countless black blades that slashed toward Ling Han. They were as dense as dark clouds. Ling Han was unafraid, and he faced his opponent head-on. The members of the 5 sects were all stunned. Most of them had never seen Ling Han before, and they had only heard of his fearsome reputation. At this moment, they couldn't help but feel astonished. This person was actually able to exchange blows with Zhang Heng. This was truly astonishing. Although Zhang Heng was only at the high extreme, His battle prowess had soared to the consummate level. Many veteran elites were no match for him, and he was known as the strongest rising star of the Heaven Sword Palace. In fact, he was on par with the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden. However, Ling Han's strength was only at this level. What made the sect so cautious that they had even mobilized all of their elites just to kill him? Zhang Heng clearly had the upper hand. If they continued to battle like this, the one who would lose would definitely be Ling Han. Zhang Heng alone was more than enough to deal with him, so why was there a need to make such a fuss? However, Zhang Heng knew that he had indeed gained the upper hand. However, that was because he had suppressed Ling Han with a higher cultivation level and greater power. In terms of the profundity of sword techniques alone, he had already lost. How can there be such a sword technique that combines speed and power so perfectly? His heart itched. As a sword maniac, he was willing to pay any price just to learn the secrets behind this sword technique. Enough. Since this brat's only at this level, let's attack together and capture him. An elder stood by the side. He had observed for a long time, and after discovering that Ling Han's strength was only at this level, he relaxed. They weren't here to fight Ling Han alone. Rather, they were here to destroy this demon that could shake the foundation of the 5 sects in the future. The consummate level elites all strode forward. They knew that there was still a massive secret hidden on Ling Han. This secret could allow the 5 sects to soar into the sky, allowing them to advance into the heavenly body tier or even the eternal river tier in the future. Back down, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shouted. Boom! 2 silhouettes of phoenix wings that were about 500 meters long unfurled behind her. However, these wings were burning with true flames, and they complemented her exquisite beauty, making her appear like a beautiful goddess of war. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, are you really going to betray us? A few elders rebuked harshly. They were so furious that they almost spat blood. In their minds, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's current achievements were naturally due to the efforts of the sect. However, not only did she not repay the sect, but she was even protecting the greatest enemy of the 5 sects. This was practically despicable to the extreme. If you take another step forward, you will become my enemy, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said menacingly. She hadn't received any benefits from the Cloud Phoenix sect. For example, she completely rejected the Realm Pill. Being able to reach the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in such a short period of time was completely because of the awakening of her bloodline. The elders exchanged a look, and all nodded. They definitely couldn't let Ling Han off. What if this brat disappeared without a trace from now on, and reappeared after tens of thousands of years? What would they do then? With this brat's freakish talent, he only needed to reach the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier by then, and it would be enough to wipe out the 5 sects. Old Yu, Old Qian, the 2 of you hold back the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The rest of you attack with me and capture that brat. All right. The elders divided the tasks and began to carry them out. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was furious. She flapped her phoenix wings, and divine flames danced, exuding a boundless might. Her cultivation level was only at the consummate level, but because of her bloodline, her flames possessed a sliver of the might of a true phoenix, so they were naturally incredibly terrifying. This was a suppression in terms of cultivation level, causing the elders to groan at the same time, expressions of discomfort appearing on their faces. They were also very speechless. Against a being with such a high-grade bloodline, they were already weakened by 30% before the battle had even begun. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden took the initiative to attack. As she delivered a palm strike, there was a cry of a phoenix, and a colorful phoenix flew out. It flapped its wings, and its whole body was wrapped in divine flames as it charged toward the members of the 5 sects. Die! The members of the 5 sects shouted sternly. Since the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden refused to repent, they would kill her as well. Chapter 1288. An army of 1 million had appeared, all of them at the Sun-Moon tier, led by Heavenly Body tier elites. This kind of lineup was too terrifying, and it was enough to sweep through an entire region. What was more frightening was that even Heavenly Body tier elites had been mobilized, So would eternal river tier elites be far behind? Was a great calamity about to befall them? Ling Han grimaced. Was he a jinx? Wherever he went, trouble would follow. Humph. Someone in the Netherworld army discovered Ling Han, and over 100 people immediately flew over, all of them waving their weapons and exuding a monstrous evil aura. Ling Han made a prompt decision. Run. He didn't take these 100 people seriously, but there were heavenly body tier elites in the enemy's camp, which was definitely not someone he could match. He didn't want to show off his bravery. Rabbit and the old ginseng were both intelligent beings, and they didn't need Ling Han's reminder to run. Fuck, you guys are really loyal. Ling Han hurriedly used the star-plucking step. You're powerful, so who will stay behind if you don't? The old ginseng said. That's right, Rabbit agreed. Don't run. The Netherworld people chased aggressively, but they were getting further and further away. The difference in speed was too great. Ling Han and the others ran far away, and just when they thought they had escaped from the threat of the Netherworld, they heard a soft humph, and a person silently appeared in front of them. He was dressed in white, and he was handsome and handsome. If it weren't for his overwhelming evil aura, he wouldn't be any different from the beings of the immortal realm. However, such a powerful evil aura meant that his cultivation level was also frighteningly high. Heavenly body tier. Ling Han's heart shuddered. He stretched out his hands, grabbing onto Rabbit and grabbing onto the old ginseng. He could hide into the Black Tower at any moment. After being targeted by such an elite, he no longer cared whether or not he would expose the secrets of the Black Tower. Don't be nervous, I just want to ask you something, the white-robed man said with a smile. His teeth were snow white and he was very charming. Ling Han also smiled and said, Then what do we do after we ask? Naturally kill them. The stakes are too high, so we can't leave them alive, the white-robed man said calmly. Damn, Ling Han laughed heartily and said, All right then, I'll listen to it. Young man, you're very bold. The white-robed man stared at Ling Han a few times and couldn't help revealing a surprised expression. What kind of cultivation technique do you cultivate? It can actually make your body return to its youthful state. The eyesight of a heavenly body tier elite was naturally able to see through Ling Han's disguise with a single glance, unlike the heavenly phoenix maiden, who only felt that there was something off about Ling Han, but didn't know exactly why. Ling Han said solemnly, What I cultivate is the first heaven mysterious art that transcends the heavens and dives into the earth, unparalleled in the world. The white-clothed man laughed heartily and said, Youngsters are truly like newborn calves that are not afraid of tigers. You even dare to tease me. Fine, I'll just extract your soul and all your secrets will be clear at a glance. He stretched out his hand, turning it into a stretch of the sky, pressing down on Ling Han. The palm force hadn't even arrived, but the terrifying aura had already suppressed Ling Han to the point where he couldn't move in the slightest. This was the power of the heavenly body tier. No matter how talented one was, one couldn't resist it. Unfortunately, he had only suppressed Ling Han with his aura, and didn't use his martial art intent to trap Ling Han. Shio, there was a flash, and Ling Han, Rabbit, and the old ginseng all disappeared. A look of surprise appeared on the white-clothed man's face. What was going on? Why had 3 living beings disappeared at the same time? If they had been teleportation talismans, he should have been able to sense the ripples of space being torn apart. Spatial God tool. His eyes swept over the area. No matter how small a spatial God tool was, there should still be traces of it. However, no matter how he searched, he couldn't find anything strange on this piece of land. I don't believe it. He grabbed all the land within a radius of 50 kilometers, and then used his great power to refine it into nothingness. Then, after a great wave of washing away the sand, what was left would be the spatial God tool. Heavenly body tier elites were too powerful, and the soil here was made of ordinary soil and rock, so how could it possibly withstand his refinement? It was easily turned into ashes, and he only needed 3 days to refine such a mountain-like piece of land. However, when this entire piece of land disappeared, the white-clothed man finally looked astonished. He couldn't find a spatial God tool. How was this possible? Could it be that they didn't hide in a spatial God tool? but it's even more impossible for it to be a teleportation talisman. He muttered to himself, unwilling to give up as he searched the surroundings. However, he still couldn't find anything. If it were any other time, he wouldn't mind searching here for 3 to 5 years. In any case, the lifespan of heavenly body tier elites was incredibly long. However, this time, he had a mission on his shoulders. Let's deal with the proper business first. He made his decision. With a single step, he was already more than 100 kilometers away. Ling Han and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. If this guy had decided to stay here, then they wouldn't have bothered to show their heads at all. Strange, why would the Netherworld suddenly launch a large-scale invasion? Ling Han was filled with confusion. Although this was the two-realm battlefield, and battle was the main theme, killing and being killed were the eternal themes. However, they had mobilized 1 million Sun-Moon tier elites, and there were even heavenly body tier elites joining in. This was no longer a small skirmish, but rather a major battle. It's fine if they're only at the heavenly body tier. If even eternal river tier elites appear, then even heavenly body tier elites can only be regarded as cannon fodder. Ling Han thought of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. She was currently in the Purple Moon army, and once war broke out, soldiers had to be on the battlefield. Regardless of whether one retired or not, under such circumstances, they had to fight. No, I have to hurry back immediately. Ling Han made his decision. He exited the Black Tower and set out toward Wolffang City. The 3 armies were all stationed outside Wolffang City, and they surrounded and protected this iron front. Once they fell, the Netherworld army would be able to march straight in and invade the entire Cloud Apex planet. He flew, and soon arrived at the camp of the Purple Moon army. However, when he arrived, he discovered that the entire camp was actually empty. It was clear that the entire Purple Moon army had been mobilized to resist the Netherworld invasion. The severity of the situation seems to be even worse than I had anticipated, Ling Han said in a low voice. Come, the Netherworld had even mobilized Eternal River tier elites. Otherwise, the entire Purple Moon army wouldn't have been mobilized. I'll go to Wolffang City to scout out the situation first. He turned toward Wolffang City, and upon entering the city, he encountered an incredibly strict inspection. The city was also filled with a somber air, and the streets were no longer as lively as they had been in the past. Everyone was hurrying along, and there was worry on their faces. Ling Han called out to a mountain river tier passerby, and tossed him a true origin stone. Then he asked, "What's happened recently? Why are you so nervous?" The passerby caught the true origin stone, and hurriedly put it away. He respectfully said, "Milord, you should have just returned from outside, right? It's incredible. The Netherworld has launched a large-scale invasion, and they're led by 3 Eternal River tier elites. In a single day, they've advanced several thousand miles, and they're about to reach Wolffang City. 3 Eternal River tier elites? Gasp. No wonder the entire Purple Moon army had mobilized. It was most likely the same for the other 2 armies. Otherwise, how could they resist an army of 1 million led by 3 Eternal River tier elites? Was an all-out war about to erupt? Chapter 1289. The Netherworld was invading on a large scale. Wolffang City had already sent out a notice that everyone had to report to the 3 armies within 3 days of receiving the news and accept orders to resist the Netherworld together. This time, there was no need to talk about retirement or meritorious service. As long as the elites of the immortal realm remained on this battlefield, they had a duty to resist the Netherworld. Furthermore, an emergency notice had already been sent out, and it wouldn't be long before more elites arrived. The Netherworld had suddenly increased the scale of the battle to this level, and they had to mobilize all the elites of the Cloud Apex planet to resist. Ling Han immediately headed to the front lines. Everyone had a duty to resist the Netherworld's invasion. This was a collision between 2 worlds, and if the Cloud Apex planet was really occupied by the Netherworld, it would definitely be a massacre. The Netherworld wouldn't refine the Cloud Apex planet into a realm pill, but the difference wouldn't be too great. Countless lives would die. Ling Han arrived at the front lines and saw that there were currently 2 armies facing off. One side was naturally the immortal realm, formed by the Purple Moon Army, the Wind Army, and the Arhat Army. There was also a large number of scattered soldiers, forming an army of about 700,000, but the quality of the soldiers was uneven. There were Mountain River Tier and Sun Moon Tier, but Mountain River Tier cultivators occupied half of the army, causing the quality of the entire army to decline greatly. It was far from comparable to the other side. This army of the Netherworld reached 1 million, and they were all at the Sun Moon Tier. With this comparison, it was clear what kind of terrifying force the Netherworld had mobilized this time, and they had an overwhelming advantage. At this moment, Ling Han couldn't care about his personal feelings. He didn't immediately seek out the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, but entered the army camp to register. He didn't try to be special, and he was willing to listen to orders and be a qualified soldier. The Netherworld launched a few attacks, but they all controlled the scale of the battle. Only a few Heavenly Body Tier elites participated in the battle, and the others were all at the Sun Moon Tier. Was this a test? No one was concerned about this. Everyone was hoping that reinforcements would quickly arrive. It would be very difficult for them to stop this army of the Netherworld alone. And the smarter ones were even more confused. Why would the Netherworld suddenly launch such a large attack? One had to know that when the elites of the Netherworld entered the Immortal Realm, they couldn't use the regulations of the Immortal Realm at all. Their battle prowess would drop to 3 or 4 stars. In an evenly matched battle, this was completely seeking death. Furthermore, the God Realm isn't necessarily weaker than the Netherworld. Is it really a good idea for you to invade it on such a large scale? Perhaps we have an earth-shattering treasure here. Even the Almighty of the Netherworld was tempted by it. Thus, they started a war to occupy this place. Being able to tempt even a great elite of the Eternal River Tier, this treasure trove must have been left behind by an elite at the consummate level of the Eternal River Tier, or even the inheritance of a saint. It has to be like this. This kind of speculation was very popular, and it quickly spread throughout the military camp. It also made many people think of searching for this treasure. If it was really left behind by a saint, then it was not impossible to reach the heavens in a single step. The battle had not even started, but many people were already having crooked thoughts. The 3 commander-in-chief had no choice but to behead a few of the most rebellious people in order to maintain military discipline. This was the bad thing when there were too many scattered soldiers. They didn't have a sense of teamwork, and it was easy for them to reveal their selfish side. After that, the Netherworld army launched a few more attacks. However, it could only be said that it was all bark and no bite. It was always controlled to a certain scale. And as time passed, the reinforcements of the 2 imperial empires also arrived in an endless stream. As more and more elites arrived, the invasion of the Netherworld seemed to be coming to a halt. This also made the majority of people believe that the Netherworld was not invading for the land of the Cloud Apex planet, but for the inheritance of a high-level Eternal River Tier or even a saint. Ling Han, the new commander wants to see you. A soldier ran over and passed on an order to Ling Han. All the scattered soldiers had not been organized into the regular army. They had not gone through any training, so no matter how strong their individual strength was, it was completely impossible for them to be integrated into the battle of the group. If they were forcibly added into the group to make up the numbers, it would only cause the opposite effect. Thus, all the scattered soldiers had been organized into an independent army. If a mutiny occurred, it would only affect this army and could not possibly affect the battle prowess of the regular army. The new commander, Ling Han, felt slightly strange. Did he know this person? Why did he suddenly want to see him? Then he would go and see him. He followed the soldier and arrived in front of a tent. The soldier stopped and respectfully said, "My lord, I have brought Ling Han." This tent was very large, showing that the owner's status was extraordinary. "Let him in," a voice said from inside. This voice is a bit familiar. Ling Han thought. The soldier beside him had already opened the tent door, and a person instantly appeared inside. Xiedong, no wonder this voice was so familiar. No wonder he wanted to see him. As it turned out, he had come to take revenge. Ling Han, you didn't think that we would meet again so soon, did you? Xie Donglai said with a cold smile, a mocking expression on his face. At first, he had wanted to go into seclusion to break through to the heavenly body tier. After breaking through, he would find Ling Han and kill Faceless along with him to redeem the face he had lost. However, he had never thought that the Netherworld would suddenly launch a large-scale invasion. Even great General Xie had been mobilized, and because he was the heir of the Xie clan, he had obtained the position of commander. More coincidentally, Ling Han just so happened to be under his command. This naturally made him overjoyed, and he immediately called Ling Han over. He wanted to show off his authority as a superior. "Why is it you again, idiot?" Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle. "Haven't you suffered enough?" Xie Donglai couldn't help but feel annoyed. However, he was confident in his victory and said, "In this place, I'm the general, and you're the soldier. Whatever I say, you have to do." "Oh, then what orders does the commander have?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Go and bring some firewood over," Xie Donglai said with a humph. Xie Donglai humph. Right now, he was only ordering Ling Han around, yet once the battle with the Netherworld began, he would send Ling Han to the most dangerous place, and borrow the hands of the Netherworld to eliminate Ling Han. "Sure." Ling Han nodded and turned to leave. Xie Donglai smirked coldly, thinking that this person's courage was only SOSO. He immediately backed down. He waited. When Ling Han returned with firewood, he would continue to order him to do other things. If he disobeyed, he would punish him according to military discipline. Who asked him to be an official? However, as he waited, his expression became darker and darker. This was because Ling Han didn't return. This brat actually dared to disobey orders. He flew into a rage and immediately walked toward Ling Han's tent. "Ling Han," he shouted loudly. His voice was like thunder, showing the intense anger in his heart. This shout startled the surrounding people, and many people came out to watch. "Why is it you again, idiot?" Ling Han walked out of the tent. "You dare to disobey orders? I'm going to punish you," Xie Donglai said coldly. Ling Han had voluntarily given him something to use against him. Chapter 1290. If I may ask, what order am I taking? Ling Han asked with a smile, completely unconcerned. Xie Donglai was speechless. In front of so many people, did he have the nerve to ask Ling Han to chop wood? Wouldn't that be laughable? Asking a Sun Moon tier elite to chop wood? What kind of joke was that? He could torment Ling Han in private, but he couldn't do it in public. It didn't take a discerning person to figure out that he was deliberately making things difficult for Ling Han. This was an unspoken rule. I'm the boss and you're the subordinate. If I make things difficult for you, you have to do it. Otherwise, I'll keep making things difficult for you until you give in. But if you give in, there'll be a second, a third, until there's no more room for retreat. Thus, if you really encountered this kind of person who was deliberately making things difficult for you, you either had to accept your fate and compromise to the end, or you wouldn't give in and fight to the end. Ling Han naturally wouldn't compromise, and chose to face it head-on. Xie Donglai's face was livid. Being contradicted by his subordinate in front of so many people made him very, very displeased. "Ling Han, you're disrespecting your superior," he said harshly. "Oh, I'm disrespecting my superior just by asking you. How impressive of you." Ling Han laughed and said, "The Netherworld army is 50 kilometers away. Captain, please go and show your might and scare them all away." Fuck, not to mention him, even if Xie Qian went personally, the Netherworld army wouldn't retreat. Xie Donglai stared at Ling Han, feeling extremely uncomfortable in his heart. His cultivation level was superior, his battle prowess was superior, and his background was superior. In fact, he was even superior to Ling Han in terms of status, so why couldn't he deal with this person? He said menacingly, "Since you're my subordinate, then I'll give you some pointers so that you won't be killed on the battlefield." "Captain is really caring and considerate," Ling Han said mockingly. "Don't be so glib. As your superior, I have a duty to guide you in your cultivation." Xie Donglai felt like he had finally grasped the crux of the matter. Since he was stronger, then he should use his strength to crush Ling Han. "It's fine if you don't want to be instructed. Go and chop 10,000 loads of firewood within a day." He was afraid that Ling Han would refuse him, so he added a time limit. Ling Han sneered and said, "What does young Master Xie need so much firewood for? Do you want to barbecue? Then you should have brought a few more servants from your home." What a joke, acting all high and mighty like a young master in a military camp. "You prick, you actually dare to challenge me, your superior? Come, let me see if you have the right to do so." Xie Donglai attacked. He stretched out his hand, flipped it over and pressed it down. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure enveloped Ling Han, trying to crush him and even force him to his knees. There was a gap of 2 small realms between the two of them, and the difference in their strength was incomparably huge. Ling Han stood proudly. Under the shroud of power, his entire body glowed, and divine patterns appeared one after another. Upon closer inspection, there were actually 9 divine dragons, and each divine dragon had a different appearance. 9 dragons tyrant body artists, the saying went, the 9 sons of the dragon were all different. The 9 divine dragons were not in the form of true dragons yet. Some were missing horns and some were missing claws. As Ling Han's body arts improved, they were continuously perfected. When the 9 divine dragons all turned into the form of true dragons, it meant that Ling Han's 9 dragons tyrant body art had reached the peak, and he had advanced into the level of a saint. What? There are actually 9 different true dragons? Whatever technique, as long as it's related to true dragons, it must be extremely powerful. No wonder he dared to oppose Xie Donglai. He really has some skills. However, the difference in cultivation level is too great. He's destined to be suppressed. Speaking of which, this Xie Donglai is really petty. He's still taking revenge at a time like this. The crowd whispered among themselves. Some sympathized with Ling Han, while others despised Xie Donglai for being petty. However, no one came out to dissuade him. They were all scattered soldiers, and usually did not have the slightest bit of friendship. Why should they take the risk of offending Xie Donglai to stand up for Ling Han? Many people became excited and started to watch the show. The 9 dragons unleashed their might, swallowing and spitting out clouds and exuding divine might. Ling Han stood proudly like a mountain. He had not only cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art, but the toughness of his godly bones was close to that of level 8 godly metal. It was really a joke to think that he could be suppressed by the pressure of the consummate level. "Xie Donglai, what are you doing flipping your hands around? Could it be that you really want to barbecue?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Damn it." Xie Donglai cursed. A mighty elite at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier actually couldn't suppress a mere cultivator at the medium extreme. Moreover, there were so many spectators. How could he keep his face? He knew that Ling Han was strange. He had killed Zhu Liun, but that was with Faceless protecting him, and he had also relied on the might of the Misty Soul capturing flower. As for Ling Han's own battle prowess, he was extremely disdainful. That was because he was a 4-star genius, so even if they were all 4-star geniuses, they would cancel each other out. He still had the overwhelming advantage of being 2 minor levels above Ling Han. In his mind, he would be able to suppress Ling Han with a flip of his hand. Not only would he be able to give Ling Han a slap to the face to vent his personal hatred, but he would also be able to intimidate these scattered soldiers so that they wouldn't dare to disobey him. Who would have thought that Ling Han would be so difficult to deal with? Instead, he felt a little embarrassed. All of a sudden, boos rang out from the crowd. "Shut up!" Xie Donglai roared in anger. He charged toward Ling Han, his hands transforming into claws that slashed down at Ling Han. Boom! He had clearly used a secret technique. His claws actually transformed into pitch-black demonic claws that were as large as a house. The claws reflected an icy luster, as if they were made of metal. Guess, could this be the black gold demonic eagle's claws? According to the legends, demonic beasts like the black gold demonic eagle are incredibly terrifying. They can tear godly metal of the same level with a single claw. If this claw lands, that guy will be in deep trouble. There were so many people present, so there were bound to be some who knew their stuff. They immediately pointed out the secret technique that Xie Donglai had used. Boom! The 2 demonic claws descended, and it was as if the space itself had shattered. Abnormal black vortexes appeared. Ling Han didn't plan to take this attack head-on. His figure flashed, and he instantly disappeared into the crowd. Xie Donglai pushed his demonic claws in pursuit. There was a heavy sound, and many people were instantly sent flying. Some were vomiting blood, and some were cursing. The scene had become extremely chaotic. We have no enmity with you, yet you actually attacked so viciously. Xie Donglai, could it be that you are a spy from the netherworld? Ling Han, however, acted as if nothing had happened. With so many people sharing the burden for him, with his strength and physique, he naturally could easily neutralize the residual power. Xie Donglai was furious. You fucking dare to slander me? He couldn't be bothered to speak anymore, and pushed his demonic claws to continue chasing after Ling Han. A spy from the netherworld is killing people. Ling Han shouted as he broke into a run and ran into the crowd. The people along the way all expressed that they couldn't dodge in time, and were sent flying by Xie Donglai's attacks. Right now, anyone could clearly see that Xie Donglai was attacking the people in the campsite like a madman. Chapter 1292. Xie Donglai kept a close eye on Ling Han. He wanted to personally witness Ling Han's death before he could escape. They were both at the Sun-Moon tier, so he was definitely more resilient than Ling Han. Moreover, he purposely didn't use his full strength because he didn't want to be surrounded and attacked by too many people from the netherworld, so that he could calmly watch Ling Han die. Ling Han had naturally also discovered Xie Donglai's gaze. It was filled with resentment and hatred, and it was as if there was a blade on his back. How could he not sense it? He shook his head inwardly. This person's desire for vengeance had truly reached the pinnacle. He actually did not hesitate to sacrifice 10,000 men just to kill him. On second thought, these 10,000 soldiers didn't belong to the Xie family. If they all died, then so be it. Damn it! A cold glint flashed across Ling Han's eyes. He suddenly turned around and charged towards Xie Donglai, shouting, "Brother Xie, let's kill the enemy together." He unsheathed his divine demon sword, and a murderous aura instantly soared into the sky. It was as if an emperor had descended. The netherworld elites in the vicinity were all sent flying. Some had their heads severed, some had their arms severed, and some had their legs severed. As long as their battle prowess hadn't reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, they would definitely be unable to escape this calamity. Ling Han charged right up to Xie Donglai. His eyes narrowed, and he instantly unleashed a divine sense attack. 7 kill subduing soul. Oh! Xie Dongshi's movements instantly froze. This was an attack on his spirit, and he could not help but be affected, but as the descendant of great General Xie, and a top-notch genius himself, how could he possibly not have cultivated a technique to train his spirit? His soul was very strong, so under the 7 kill subduing soul art, he only paused for a moment before returning to normal. However, it should be known that amidst the chaos, the swords and sabers were also very messy. In that short instant, Xie Donglai had already been struck several times. Fortunately, his protective origin power had not dissipated, so his injuries were not serious. Damn it, he said angrily. He was supposed to be the one who tricked Ling Han, but why was he the one being tricked instead? If not for the fact that his strength was strong enough and his divine soul was very stable, then that strike just now would not just be a mere slash. Die! He could no longer suppress the murderous intent in his heart. He turned the muzzle of his gun towards Ling Han. A golden broadsword flashed, swirling with a black aura. It was full of corrosiveness, and even the air seemed to be melting. The surrounding people of the underworld were all confused. Why were their own people fighting each other? But they didn't care. They could just kill them all. Bang 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 bang. Ling Han and Xie Donglai were trapped in a tight encirclement. Not only did they have to guard against each other, but they also had to defend against the attacks from the Netherworld army. Moreover, this was not just 1 or 2 attacks. As the number of people left in their lone army dwindled, the pressure on them also increased. Theoretically speaking, Ling Han should have died long ago. He was merely in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so there was no way that he could last longer than someone at the peak stage of the consummate level. However, in reality, Ling Han was still alive and kicking the entire time, and it looked like he wouldn't give up until he killed Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai couldn't imagine why this guy was still alive. "You're the one who's going to die," Ling Han said coldly. "For the sake of your personal grudge, you actually sacrificed the entire army. You're so heartless and crazy, so what right do you have to be human? Heh, an entire army is going to die with you, and you're still not willing to rest in peace." Xie Donglai brandished his saber in a swift slash. Golden light danced in the air, but the black corrosive aura was full of darkness, forming a strong contrast. "You're really hopeless." Ling Han didn't say anything else. Xie Donglai's way of thinking was already rotten to the core. He was completely hopeless, and there was no point in saving him. He unsheathed the divine demon sword, and used the lightning sword technique. The surrounding netherworld elites were all sent flying by his slashes. They were no match for him at all. If heavenly body tier elites didn't appear, then even the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier would have to be wary of Ling Han, who wielded the divine demon sword. Of course, if they could surpass 3 or 4 stars of battle prowess on the basis of consummate level, they could still crush Ling Han. For example, Xie Donglai struck with his saber, and Ling Han didn't dare to take it head-on. Instead, he used the star-plucking step to dodge. In any case, there were many netherworld warriors here, so he could just let them block him. The two of them battled in the netherworld camp for a long time, and this gradually attracted the attention of netherworld elites. A divine sense swept over, and both Ling Han and Xie Donglai felt a chill all over their bodies. "You're merely at the Sun Moon tier, and you actually dare to fight your way here?" A large hand descended from the sky, and slapped toward Ling Han and Xie Donglai who were fighting. Countless stars floated above the large hand, and it was as if the entire sky was pressing down. Heavenly body tier elites. Xie Donglai's expression changed drastically. He could no longer care about watching Ling Han die with his own eyes. At this moment, escaping was more important. He hurriedly retrieved a divine seal and slapped it onto his body. Suddenly, golden light flowed and wrapped around him. After returning to the Xie clan, he asked for another life-saving seal. He immediately transformed into a streak of golden light and charged toward the heavens. "You still want to leave?" Ling Han had long since expected this. Using his body as a bow, he activated the ultimate arrow. An arrow shot out and chased after Xie Donglai. The techniques of the Eternal River tier were too astonishing. Even a divine seal that they had casually created possessed great might. If it was only the annihilating Dragon Star arrow, it definitely wouldn't be able to catch up. Thus, Ling Han directly unleashed the ultimate arrow, and instantly unleashed all the power in his body. The arrow was extraordinarily fast, and there was only a splash of blood. Xie Donglai released a tragic cry, and actually fell from the sky. It was hard to imagine that a 4-star genius at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier would actually be wounded by an arrow from a cultivator at the medium extreme. However, who asked Xie Donglai to only think of escaping in his desperation? Moreover, he had unleashed the divine seal, thinking that it was absolutely safe, so he naturally relaxed. Who would have thought that there would be such a godly arrow? However, it was precisely because Xie Donglai was strong enough that the divine seal carried him away that he was fast enough. Otherwise, this arrow wouldn't have merely wounded him, but directly shattered him into pieces. Interesting. The large hand scooped over and grabbed Xie Donglai. Then, with a turn, it grabbed toward Ling Han. Ling Han had now lost all of his power, and couldn't even maintain his adult state. With a PU, he turned into an infant. How could he dare to face this head-on? With a Xiao, he entered into the Black Tower. If he couldn't recover his power, it would be useless for him to come out. The large hand grabbed empty air, and a figure appeared right after. It was a gray-robed man. His figure and appearance were very normal, but his beard was actually strips of flesh that were still wriggling, causing one to shiver even though it wasn't cold. Xie Donglai was currently being held in his hand, though he had already lost consciousness. His limbs were dangling, and blood was flowing endlessly. If he had known that this would be the result, he wouldn't have entered deep into the enemy's territory alone, even if he was beaten to death. He had already lost his life. Where is he? The fleshy bearded elite's eyes swept over, and an expression of surprise appeared on his face. This Ling Han had actually disappeared. A mere minor character at the Sun Moon tier actually managed to make him disappear without a trace without him noticing. Interesting, he said again. His divine sense spread out, wanting to find Ling Han. Chapter 1293. Ling Han felt that he had already tried his best. The netherworld elites that had died in his hands numbered in the hundreds, and now that he had lost all his power, it was impossible for him to kill the enemy. More importantly, he was now definitely targeted by that elite with the flesh beard, and added with the white-robed elite he had encountered earlier, the two heavenly body tier elites wanted to capture him, so it was better not to show himself for the time being. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden had once promised to take care of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden on his behalf. This kind of elite kept her word, so Ling Han was not worried that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden would be harmed in the chaotic battle. After all, the fierce woman was also a top-notch elite, and unless a heavenly body tier elite appeared, no one could subdue her. Ling Han began to recover his power. With a pile of true origin stones beside him, he could be very wild inside the Black Tower. All the pores on his body opened, continuously absorbing the power of the true origin stones, and his dried-up dantian immediately became fertile. An hour later, his origin power was completely recovered, and his physical strength recovered passively. The speed was very fast, and he had recovered to his peak state before his origin power. In the Black Tower, he saw that the elite with the flesh beard did not go far. He stood proudly above, his divine sense spreading out, obviously still searching for his whereabouts. He was haunting him. Ling Han simply began to concoct pills. He had nothing to do, so he could not waste time. A day later, he also finished concocting a cauldron of level 4 alchemical pills, and then saw that the battle had already ended. Both sides had retreated, leaving behind innumerable corpses, and blood staining the ground red. These were all the corpses and blood of gods. If it were not for the fact that the regulations here were too strange, they could definitely nurture a godly medicine. He exited the Black Tower and hurried back to the army camp. This battle caused the immortal realm to suffer heavy losses. The three great armies originally had about 700,000 people, and later, a large number of reinforcements arrived, and the total number of soldiers reached about 1,300,000. However, their overall strength was only similar to that of the Netherworld, because any random soldier of the Netherworld was in the Sun Moon tier. And after this battle, the number of troops of the immortal realm suddenly dropped to about 800,000. The majority of those who died in battle were in the Mountain River tier, and there was not a small number of Sun Moon tiers. In fact, 3 heavenly body tiers had died. This shook the entire Cloud Apex planet, and there were even people who suggested asking for help from other planets in the galaxy. This suggestion was immediately rejected. Firstly, it would take at least a month or 2 to travel across the star space, which was too time-consuming. Secondly, it was easier to invite a god in than to send him away. Territory was the most important thing to every force. If they could occupy a piece of land, they would be able to use the power of the nation to increase the strength of the entire army. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, the 2 great imperial empires did not want a third imperial empire to step onto Cloud Apex planet. Furthermore, the current situation was far from being out of control, and the 2 great imperial empires were completely capable of holding on. There was news that the Netherworld had been searching for something in the 2-realm battlefield. This made everyone even more certain that the Netherworld had not come to occupy the Cloud Apex planet, but for the treasures here. Another piece of news was that Xie Donglai was actually still alive. He had been taken as a hostage, and the Xie clan was forced to pay a large number of true origin stones to redeem him. Ling Han was astonished. This guy's life was too tough, wasn't it? He didn't even die? Thinking back, Xie Donglai had used a divine seal to escape and was blasted down by him. Then, he was captured by an elite of the Netherworld. Probably that elite of the Netherworld had also seen that Xie Donglai had used a divine seal, and thought that he definitely had a great identity, so he thought of capturing him as a commodity. Ling Han had now become one of the few survivors of the army that he was in. Finally, there were still about a dozen people who had escaped from the heavy encirclement, and all of them cursed Xie Donglai to death. If this guy hadn't been so stubborn, how could they have fallen into a dangerous situation and almost been completely wiped out? However, the people of the Xie clan were obviously very skilled in public relations. Immediately, an opposing opinion appeared. They thought that Xie Donglai was a brave man who could do what others couldn't, and that he was determined to kill the enemy. Furthermore, in order to stay at the back and win a chance of survival for the others, he did not hesitate to fight to the end and be trapped in the enemy's camp. He could still speak so boldly and confidently even after being taken as a hostage. Only a great force like the Xie clan could be so shameless. But since the Xie clan had spoken, who dared to say otherwise? Thus, Xie Donglai became a hero, and heroes naturally couldn't be sacrificed so easily. The Xie clan expressed their agreement to the Netherworld's conditions, and took out a large amount of true origin stones to redeem Xie Donglai. However, it was one thing for the Xie clan to portray Xie Donglai as a hero, and it was another matter for the Xie clan to think inside the clan. This time, they had caused them to bleed so much, so how could the Xie clan not punish them? Xie Donglai was immediately summoned back to the clan. As for how he was going to be dealt with, it was not something that outsiders could know. Ling Han sighed ruefully. Even this hadn't killed Xie Donglai. Could it be that this guy was born in the year of the cockroach? However, what he didn't know was that Xie Donglai hated him to the bone. His plan, which should have been foolproof, had been foiled by Ling Han. Moreover, his status in the Xie clan had plummeted because of this. Perhaps he would even become an idle member of the Xie clan. The two armies were in a stalemate, and battles would occasionally erupt. When 2 months had passed, the Netherworld suddenly had a clear target, and began to launch a frenzied attack on the Purple Moon Army. Although the three great armies were fighting together, it was obviously impossible for them to be mixed up. Thus, the target of the Netherworld's attack was very clear. They were targeting the Purple Moon Army. In order to prove this point, the three great armies had deliberately spread out a little, and the result was even more obvious. Could it be that these brats from the Netherworld wanted the women of the immortal realm, and in large numbers? All of a sudden, everyone speculated. There was a very popular theory, and that was that the Netherworld wanted these women in order to give birth to descendants that had the bloodline of the Netherworld and the immortal realm. These people would have the ability to adapt to the regulations of the two realms. After a few years, these people would be able to easily infiltrate into the immortal realm and give it a fatal blow. This theory was quite frightening. At first, it sounded very reasonable, but when they thought about it again, it was full of flaws. Putting aside how many years of preparation for this, after these women entered the Netherworld, they would be slowly assimilated. In other words, only the first batch of children would have the ability to accommodate the regulations of the two realms at the same time. Moreover, they would have to stay in the two-realm battlefield all the time. Otherwise, they would definitely be assimilated by the regulations of the Netherworld. With just that batch of people, how many prodigies could they produce? If they weren't prodigies, how much destructive power could they create after sneaking into the immortal realm? Moreover, could the Netherworld really trust these newborns and devote all of their resources to nurture them? At least, Ling Han didn't believe it. He suddenly thought of a possibility. There was a little beast in the Purple Moon Army, and that little beast just happened to be from the Netherworld. What a coincidence! The Netherworld Army was targeting the Purple Moon Army. What if it was because of that little beast? Although it was inconceivable that the little beast only knew how to act cute, there were such coincidences in this world. Not long after the little beast appeared, the Netherworld launched a large-scale invasion, and their target was the Purple Moon Army. Disregarding all impossibilities, no matter how inconceivable the result was, it was the truth. Chapter 1294. That little beast was not simple, actually being able to make the Netherworld mobilize such a huge force, causing countless lives to be lost. Why didn't they say it clearly, and directly have the immortal realm take the little beast out? It was very simple. Once the immortal realm realized the extraordinariness of the little beast, It would definitely be a rare commodity. At that time, the price they would have to pay would not only be the deaths of so many people, but possibly even more, much more. Ling Han couldn't help but be shocked. Exactly how important was the little beast that the netherworld would pay such a price to take it back? Though all this was only his guess, he was very confident that this was the truth of the netherworld's invasion. The other theories, whether it was treasures or abduction, were all unreliable. However, who would believe such a crazy theory? A mere little beast in the mountain river tier could cause such a huge battle? What a colossal joke! Ling Han wanted to inform the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, but after some thought, it was even more inappropriate. According to his plan, he would send the little beast back to the netherworld, and then the netherworld would naturally retreat. Even if he guessed wrong, a harmless little beast would not make much of a difference. But if the Purple Moon Divine Maiden believed his words, why would she use the little beast to threaten the netherworld? That could escalate the scale of the war. This kind of guess came from the fact that the netherworld had not revealed what they were looking for all along, because they did not want the little beast to become a weapon that could be used against them. In fact, some people might even go to the extreme and kill the little beast. Using the little beast to threaten them could very possibly have the opposite effect, and cause the netherworld to go berserk. Ling Han decided to act privately and find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The two of them would send the little beast back to the netherworld together and end this war. Otherwise, it would only cause more people to bleed and lose their lives. Because their camp had suffered heavy casualties, there were temporarily no missions for them, nor were they assigned to other independent camps. They were given a considerable amount of freedom. Ling Han easily left the camp and arrived in front of the Purple Moon Army. However, he could not enter the Purple Moon Army. The military discipline here was very strict, and even if Ling Han had the token that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden had given him, it was useless because this was a time of war. Fortunately, Ling Han had become quite familiar with the Purple Moon Army now, and he just so happened to run into a group of young girls. He asked them to inform the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and after a while, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden appeared. She hugged the little beast, but to Ling Han's surprise, there was no longer any evil aura on the little beast's body, as if it was a demonic beast born and bred in the god realm. If Ling Han hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have suspected that this little fellow came from the netherworld. This further reinforced Ling Han's conjecture that the little critter was extraordinary. What happened? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked. Ling Han nodded and communicated his analysis and conjecture to the other party using his divine sense. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was stunned at first, and felt that this was practically a fantasy story. However, she didn't directly point out that Ling Han was imagining things. Instead, she asked, "Are you sure?" "At least 80%. Ling Han nodded. "Go." It was clear that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had absolute trust in Ling Han. Since Ling Han said that he was confident, she chose to believe in Ling Han. The two of them left the campsite and headed deeper into the two-realm battlefield, bypassing the blockade of the netherworld. After all, this place was too big, and the netherworld couldn't possibly completely seal off this place. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden could leave the campsite for a limited amount of time, but she couldn't leave for too long. Otherwise, she would be treated as a deserter, and if it wasn't for the fact that the army that Ling Han was in was practically non-existent, he would also be greatly restricted. "You go back first, I'll send this guy to the netherworld," Ling Han said. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was filled with worry. In the eyes of the beings of the immortal realm, the netherworld was the most dangerous place, and there were man-eating demons everywhere. Moreover, although Ling Han was extremely talented, he was only in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, after all. Now that the netherworld was invading on a large scale, and there were countless elites, how dangerous would it be to go to the netherworld? "Don't worry, have you forgotten that I still have the Black Tower?" Ling Han said with a smile. Since he knew that there was another celestial realm, and the Black Tower was more so a celestial tool, if it really showed its might, even saints could be suppressed to death. However, in that case, the celestial realm would definitely be alerted, and there would be true supreme elites coming to search for the Black Tower. At that time, even if Ling Han hid in the Black Tower, he could possibly suffer a calamity. Thus, it was best not to use the Black Tower if possible. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden thought for a long while, and still handed the little beast over to Ling Han. This made the little beast cry out in anxiety. It was unknown whether it was reluctant to leave the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, or it was afraid that Ling Han would slaughter it and make it into soup. Ling Han couldn't allow this little beast to act coquettishly. After grabbing it, his figure shot off quickly. Now that the people of the two realms were facing off at the front lines, there were actually not many people here. Very easily, Ling Han entered deep into the center of the two-realm battlefield. This place had become a stretch of chaos, and the space was incredibly chaotic. Because this was the connecting point of the two realms, direction had lost all meaning here. Ling Han walked resolutely. In this place, the most serious collision occurred between the regulations of the two realms, and they all turned into nothingness. Thus, it was impossible to use the regulations of heaven and earth here, and power had become the only element of battle prowess. But as he continued forward, the regulations reappeared, and in front of Ling Han, a completely different space appeared. Actually, it was also a galaxy, but Ling Han just had a feeling that it was incompatible with the galaxy of the immortal realm. This was a change in the regulations. With a thought from Ling Han, the aura that belonged to a demon master rose up, enveloping his whole body. Now, anyone who saw him would think that he was someone from the netherworld. That kind of aura was completely different from the beings of the netherworld. The little beast also changed, exuding an aura that was unique to the netherworld. True enough, it was like a chameleon and had the ability to adapt to its environment. Ling Han was shocked. What kind of species was this? Why was it so strange? Jiu. The little beast bared its claws at Ling Han, as if annoyed that he had asked it and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden to leave. Hey, that's my wife. The one who should be jealous is me, Ling Han said with a smile. Xiao's figure suddenly appeared. Ling Han did not realize how he had appeared at all. It was as if he had been here all along, but Ling Han had not discovered him. This was a tall and sturdy man that was 9 meters tall. The muscles all over his body bulged like rocks, exuding a terrifying feeling of power. With a slight movement, even the air exploded. Very good. Young mistress has finally been found. This man laughed loudly, showing a gratified expression. He stretched out a hand and made a grabbing motion, and the little beast landed in his palm. He nodded at Ling Han and said, "Brat, you have done a great service. I have to immediately bring young mistress back, and there is no time to reward you. How about this? Take this token, and come to the chaotic demon palace to receive your reward." He tossed a silver plaque to Ling Han, and then took a large stride, instantly disappearing into the distance. Only then did Ling Han breathe a sigh of relief. Under the powerful pressure of the other's aura, he practically could not even breathe. Eternal River Tear. True enough, the target of the netherworld was the little beast. Furthermore, even an elite of the Eternal River Tier had to address him as young mistress. Was this the meaning of young mistress? No wonder they wanted to start a war. The identity of the little beast was too important. Chapter 1296. There's finally substantial improvement. Ling Han was overjoyed. Previously, though he could exude heaven's might and use the power of heavenly tribulation, he hadn't formed divine patterns. This meant that his comprehension was insufficient, and he couldn't form his own battle prowess. He waved his hand, and a bolt of lightning shot out, turning a tall mountain in front of him into nothingness. From a certain perspective, Ling Han had now become the embodiment of heavenly tribulation, and had the ability to use heavenly tribulation. However, the might of his heavenly tribulation naturally couldn't compare to heaven and earth, but compared to other lightning cultivators, it was many times stronger. Continue cultivating in seclusion. This time, I'm going to advance to consummate level. Ling Han made up his mind. As long as he reached consummate level with his powerful battle prowess, he would be able to defeat any elite of the 5 sects. He began to cultivate in seclusion. He comprehended under the reincarnation tree, and when he was really bored, he would concoct some alchemical pills. In any case, level 8 alchemical pills were extremely time-consuming, and one concoction would take half a month. After a few concoctions, 3 months would pass. Body tempering in immortal flames, berserk blood spirit pill, and then comprehension, and comprehension again. In the blink of an eye, a year quietly passed. Ling Han finally advanced into consummate level. This meant that his physique had reached the level above level 8 godly metal, and slightly below level 9. Merely this defensive ability made him almost invincible in the Sun-Moon tier. And now, after being tempered in immortal flames, he could return to his appearance of 4 or 5 years old. This improvement was very shocking. Even Small Tower clicked its tongue in praise, thinking that even if the master of the Black Tower was resurrected, he couldn't do better than Ling Han. This caused Ling Han to feel flattered. He could actually compare to the original master of the Black Tower. You think too much. The Holy Venerable is the extraordinary person who created the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and creating a supreme Heaven Scroll naturally is full of difficulties, and can't be accomplished in a single step. Otherwise, with the Holy Venerable's talent, at most 10 times in immortal flames, he would be able to reach the level of small accomplishment. Small Tower dealt another blow to Ling Han. Go! Ling Han raised his middle finger. This Tsundra Tower just liked to oppose him. However, he had finally reached consummate level, and it was time for him to vent his anger. Moreover, he could suppress the heavenly phoenix divine maiden now. Fierce bitch, just you wait and see. After Ling Han stabilized his cultivation level, he began to swagger back to Wolf Fong City. He had picked up a large number of realm spirit stones, and he had also refined a large number of alchemical pills. He could sell them all and exchange them for godly metal to improve the quality of his divine demon sword. This was his first priority. As expected, he was discovered by the people of the 5 sects. Very quickly, a net was formed, and experts came one after another, surrounding him. Brat, you actually dare to swagger around like this? Even though we're on different sides, I can't help but admire you. A man stepped out with a sword in his hand, emanating a shocking sword intent. This was a big shot of the Heaven Sword Palace, and his name was Han Feng. He had already reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier 1 million years ago, and he was also a 4-star genius himself. After another 1 million years of accumulation, though his cultivation level hadn't advanced any further, his battle prowess had increased greatly. There was a saying, and that was, whoever could block a strike from Han Feng could be called an elite among the Sun-Moon tier, strong enough to rank in the top 100. Of course, this was a little exaggerated. After all, there were true prodigies who had cultivated to the pinnacle level in this world, but such prodigies didn't have much interaction with Han Feng, so it was impossible for them to spar. Thus, Han Feng's reputation was extremely great among the Sun-Moon tier. Even such a trump card elite was mobilized, so it could be seen that the 5 sects were determined to kill Ling Han. Not only Han Feng, but there was also Qian Yi of the Absolute Saber sect, Palace leader Shi Hua of the Cloud Phoenix sect, Shangguan Qiao of the Blue Thunder sect, and Tai Wuya of the Earth Dragon sect. They were all not much weaker than Han Feng, and belonged to the ranks of the true powerful figures of each sect. But now all these powerful figures had actually appeared. The longer Ling Han disappeared, the more panicked the 5 sects became. This brat's strength advanced by leaps and bounds, and who knew whether he would already be an elite in the consummate level if they allowed him to remain silent for 8 to 10 years. Consummate level? Shangguan Qiao frowned. She was already an old woman, but one could still see the beautiful contours of her wrinkled face. It could be seen that she had definitely been a calamitous beauty in the past. However, time was unforgiving, and no matter how beautiful a beauty was, there would come a day when she would grow old. About 100 people from the 5 sects all looked wary. They had been worried that after Ling Han disappeared, he would have stepped into the consummate level when he reappeared, and this kind of worry had now become reality, and the time was so short that they couldn't accept it. It had only been a year. When they had met Ling Han in the army camp, he had only been in the late stage of the medium extreme. So what? Han Feng said proudly. He had the belief that he was invincible, and the divine sword in his hand could kill any sun-moon tier cultivator. That's right. This time, not only have we mobilized our strongest elites, we have also brought a few precious god tools. How could it be that we still can't kill this brat? The palace mistress Xihua said coldly. She had also been a beauty in the past, but unfortunately, she was like Shangguan Qiao now, her face covered in wrinkles and no longer youthful. Everyone, let me take the lead first. Han Feng was very battle-hungry. Shangguan Qiao and the others all nodded at each other. Han Feng was also known as the #1 elite in the 5 sects, and his battle prowess was indeed unparalleled. Of course, having high battle prowess didn't mean that one would definitely survive to the end in a fierce battle of life and death. In this regard, the 4 of them were extremely confident that they would be the ones to survive in the end. Han Feng strode out, sword in hand, sword intent exuding from his whole body. Weng, 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 a circle of swords appeared behind him, forming a circle with the tips of the swords pointing outwards. Then, it formed a second circle, a third circle, and in an instant, several hundred circles had formed, condensing into tens of thousands of sword images. Pooh! Many disciples of the 5 sects in the vicinity immediately vomited blood. So what if they were in the sun-moon tier? They couldn't withstand this kind of sword intent at all. Han Feng being known as the #1 elite in the sun-moon tier of the 5 sects was not just a boast. Ling Han crossed his hands behind his back, completely unconcerned. Putting aside the fact that his present battle prowess was already not much weaker than the others, merely the strength of his physique had determined that Han Feng would not be able to harm a single hair on his head. If the other had cultivated to the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier, or even the peak stage, then Ling Han would have to frown. After all, this was battle prowess that could rival the heavenly body tier. Isn't this Brother Ling? There was a loud laugh, and a white-robed man walked out from the crowd. His face was even covered with a piece of cloth, completely covering his ears, nose, mouth, eyes, and hair. He walked over so casually, and those who didn't know would think that he was a member of the 5 sects. However, the members of the 5 sects were scared out of their wits, because this person walked over with a supreme aura, and they couldn't stop him at all. No, it wasn't that they couldn't stop him, but that they were completely unable to stop him. They only felt that in front of him, they were as weak as an ant. Brother Faceless. Ling Han laughed loudly, his eyes sweeping over, and immediately said, "Congratulations, Brother Faceless, you've finally taken another step." The other had reached the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier. Chapter 1297. In truth, Ling Han couldn't break through Faceless cultivation. However, this person had previously said that he was at the late stage of the Lamita realm, and then he had gone into seclusion to try and reach the peak of the Lamita realm. Now that he had come out, and his aura had become much stronger, it meant that he had definitely succeeded. If he wasn't a peak Lamita, then what was he? The people of the 5 sects were both shocked and furious. Why would an outsider appear at this time? Furthermore, it was Ling Han's friend. And this guy seems to be very, very strong. Faceless smiled and said, "Discussing it with Brother Ling has given me enough enlightenment." Brother Ling, do you have time? Let's discuss it again." He was in high spirits, and he didn't care about the people from the 5 sects at all. In reality, he indeed had this qualification. He had already cultivated to the peak stage of the pinnacle level, so he was equivalent to an elite of the heavenly body tier. Would heavenly body tier elites care about sun-moon tier elites? No matter how many of them there were, it was impossible for them to bridge the gap between the major cultivation levels. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Brother Faceless, please wait to the side. Allow me to deal with these people. I'll help you." Faceless gaze swept over him, appearing extremely relaxed. "No need." Ling Han shook his head. "All right." Faceless nodded and walked to the side to sit down. Han Feng and the others were enraged. Although Faceless hadn't revealed his true strength, he could still tell that he was shockingly powerful. Therefore, since he did not participate in the battle, it was better not to provoke him. The most important thing now was to get rid of Ling Han and get rid of a thorn in the side of the 5 sections. Die! Han Feng was the first to attack. With a wave of his sword, Wang, the circle of swords behind him exploded, and 10,000 sword shadows shot toward Ling Han. Faceless couldn't help but nod and said, "This person isn't weak. Although his power is only 4 stars, his sword techniques are extraordinarily profound. If he had just reached the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, he might not be a match for him. He might not even be Han Feng's match even if he reached the pinnacle realm." This was an extremely high evaluation, and it also indirectly explained a principle: realm did not represent battle prowess. Tens of thousands of sword projections surged toward Ling Han, each of them possessing the power to kill an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Even a king tier like Faceless didn't dare to take this attack head-on. He had to either parry or dodge it. The reputation of a veteran expert was definitely not undeserved. Ling Han raised his right hand, clenched it into a fist, and punched out. The sword shadows struck Ling Han's fists, creating countless splashes of light like gorgeous fireworks. Every time the sword swept past, Ling Han's figure would be pushed back a little. When the tens of thousands of sword shadows swept past, Ling Han had also retreated about 100 steps. However, that was all. The skin on his fist did not even break. The people of the 5 sects were dumbfounded. In terms of lethality, sword cultivators were definitely the cream of the crop among their peers, and Han Feng was the cream of the crop, known to be invincible. However, his full-powered strike was actually blocked by Ling Han with a casual punch. Who wouldn't be dumbfounded by this? Heaven-defying. The lowly commoners of this small world are simply heaven-defying. Ling Han waved his hand and said with a smile, "Not bad, you have some strength. It hurts a little." It only hurts a little. The people of the 5 sects didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At least, Han Feng's strike still made Ling Han feel pain, but it was only pain. It didn't even break his skin. Faceless clapped his hands and laughed, saying, "So Brother Ling's physique can improve along with his cultivation level. That's incredible. I guess I'll have to use all my strength to break through Brother Ling's defense." Everyone was shocked. Han Feng's full-powered strike did not even break Ling Han's skin, but this person said that he could break through Ling Han's defense. Was he boasting or was he telling the truth? If it was the truth, then it was too frightening. There was such a person standing right beside him, and he could attack for Ling Han at any time. "Don't worry, I won't attack." Faceless smiled. "Brother Ling can take care of you dregs alone." Hearing him say this, the people of the 5 sects all had boiling killing intent towards him. If it weren't for the fact that they feared his strength, many of them would have already rushed up to attack him. In the territory of the 5 sects, they were used to doing whatever they wanted. Han Feng took a deep breath and said, "I've never admired anyone but Brat, although you're someone I must kill, I still admire you. To be able to cultivate to such a level in a short 10 years after the sky was split open, and to possess such battle prowess, you're indeed extraordinary. No need to be so hypocritical." Ling Han said coldly, "My battle prowess was trained by myself. As for you, I'm afraid you owe most of it to the realm pill, old dog. Today, I'll cut off your head and use it as a sacrifice to the billions of lives that died in vain." Faceless let out a cold snort and stared at Han Feng. He obviously knew what the realm pill represented. Han Feng's killing intent blazed, and he said, "You're about to die, yet you still talk so much. You deserve to die 100 times. He pointed at the space between his eyebrows. The space between his eyebrows actually split open, and 4 divine swords flew out. Each divine sword floated around him, emitting an aura no weaker than his. One with the divine weapon, the divine tool in his hand, had not fused with his sun and moon, and was only an ordinary divine tool. Logically speaking, becoming one with the divine tool could increase battle prowess, but the cultivator's body would definitely be weakened. After all, the sun and moon had been separated. But Han Feng had clearly fused the 4 suns and moons into the divine tool, and his own strength did not seem to be affected, and he was still extremely powerful. Realm pill, Ling Han said in his heart. This was definitely the benefit of the realm pill. A pill refined from billions of lives. How could it be as simple as increasing one's cultivation level? He was also boiling with killing intent, relying on the realm pill to become invincible among those of the same cultivation level. Such a so-called elite made him spurn. "The one who should die is you," Ling Han roared angrily, and swung his fist at Han Feng. He directly released the might of heaven, exuding the supreme domineering aura of "I rule the world." This was not the aura of a king tier, but one that surpassed a king tier. No matter how much of a king tier you were, you still had to submit to this starry sky, but Ling Han directly represented the will of heaven and earth. Han Feng's battle prowess instantly decreased sharply. At first, Ling Han's heaven's might could weaken his opponent's battle prowess by 1 star, but as his heaven's might reached small accomplishment, the extent of this weakening became 2 stars. There was a gap of 3 subminor levels between them, and Han Feng was also a 4-star genius. And added with the boost from sword cultivation and the realm pill, his true battle prowess should be able to surpass 5 stars. And Ling Han was a 6-star genius, and taking into account the difference of 3 subminor levels, his battle prowess was weaker than his opponent by 2 stars. But once heaven's might was released, this gap of 2 stars disappeared. This was an evenly matched battle. Ling Han's roar was like thunder, and he threw a furious punch at Han Feng. His fists were intertwined with the power of lightning, and their destructive power was incredibly frightening. Ping 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 ping. He was fighting Han Feng's 4 divine swords alone, as well as Han Feng's main body. The 5 individuals' battle prowess was about the same, and any one of them would be able to sweep away the entire Sun-Moon tier, but in front of Ling Han, they did not have the slightest advantage. The faces of the members of the 5 sects twitched. Han Feng was the number 1 elite of the 5 sects, and had been tested by time and age. Even in the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire, when mentioning Sun-Moon tier elites, Han Feng would definitely be mentioned. But now, he was unable to defeat a newcomer who had just advanced into the consummate level. Everyone shivered in fear. Could it be that the 5 great sects that had existed for countless years would really be destroyed by Ling Han one day? Chapter 1298. Ling Han was driven mad with fury. Thinking of how all the people he once knew had been used as ingredients to refine the realm pill 10,000 years ago, his killing intent boiled. And this person was the true leader of the 5 sects, one of the main culprits who had pushed for the realm pill to be refined. Multiple divine patterns bloomed on his body, and the intent of martial art filled his whole body, exuding endless might. Han Feng was stunned. His battle prowess was indeed not inferior to his opponent's, but this young man was freakish. His sword couldn't hurt him in the slightest, and the most he could do was shred his clothes. How was he supposed to play this? His origin power was limited, and even after his power was exhausted, his opponent still had a terrifying physique, so there was no need to worry at all. Meanwhile, he might be able to sever his vitality when he reached the mountain river tier. This caused a strong sense of fear to rise in him. Attack together. Shangguan Qiao and the others obviously came out as well. At this time, who cared about fighting alone? They all drew their god tools, and began to attack together. "Brother Ling?" Faceless asked softly. "No need, I can deal with it," Ling Han said confidently. "What an arrogant brat, I'll send you to hell." Palace Mistress Shi Hua humphed, and 2 phoenix wings that were 300 meters long spread out behind her. However, upon closer inspection, the feathers on the phoenix wings were a bit mixed, and the divine flames burning on them were not pure enough. As expected, her bloodline was far inferior to the heavenly phoenix divine maidens. "I should be the one to say that to you." Ling Han gave a battle cry, and used his full battle prowess. The embryonic forms of 9 true dragons danced around him. His physical strength and origin power could be perfectly combined in close combat, because there was no need for any techniques, and he only needed to smash. This kind of battle style was simple and violent, but its power was extraordinarily great. Ping 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 ping. So what if the 5 elites joined forces? They were instead suppressed by Ling Han, and were forced to retreat step by step. His physique was really too strong, allowing him to only attack and not defend. Only he could attack, and his opponents wouldn't be able to withstand it no matter how strong they were. Even the strongest defense would have loopholes, and once a loophole appeared, it would be fatal. Ling Han's fist smashed onto Tai Wuya's face, directly blasting half of his face away. Even his spirit was severely injured. Tai Wuya groaned and retreated, wanting to leave the battle to heal himself. How could Ling Han let him have his way? It is better to cut off one than to injure 10 fingers. He chased after Chen Wuya. Sacrificial artifact. Han Feng hurriedly called out. On the side, 10 disciples from the 5 sects formed a group and took out 5 god weapons. They were a sword, a saber, a mirror, a comb, and a pair of scissors. The god tools absorbed a large amount of energy, and the 50 disciples of the 5 sects instantly collapsed to the ground. Their faces were all pale, as if they had fallen seriously ill. However, the 5 god tools had awakened, and they radiated with a terrifying, vicious aura. Faceless was astonished, and he said, "Brother Ling, the might of these 5 god tools should have reached the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, at least the middle stage of the Sun-Moon tier. Are you sure you don't need me to act?" If he were to make a move, he would naturally be able to deal with it easily. However, this time, he would not be able to deal with Ling Han. No need. Ling Han was full of confidence. He was confident in his physique, and he was even more confident in the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Even if his physique was really damaged, he would be able to immediately recover. Powerful defense was not scary. What was scary was powerful defense combined with a heaven-defying recovery ability. Boom! The 5 god tools unleashed their might. They were not as simple as level 8 god tools. Rather, they were a step above that. Who knew how many years they had been tempered by the elites of the 5 sects, and how many precious materials had been added to them? Their might was indeed terrifying. This was equivalent to 5 elites who had reached the pinnacle level, and they had all reached the middle stage of the pinnacle level. More importantly, god tools would not be affected by heaven's might. Ling Han nodded in his mind. It was indeed a wise decision not to rashly attack the headquarters of the 5 sects. After all, veteran forces like these would definitely have great protective formations, and added with such god tools, even those who had reached the pinnacle level might not be able to defeat them. After all, they had millions or even tens of millions of years of accumulation. Even a skinny camel was bigger than a horse. He drew out the divine demon sword, and sword chi soared into the sky. God tools clashed fiercely with god tools. The quality of the divine demon sword was not high, but it had experienced the tempering of the heavenly tribulation with Ling Han, so its might had naturally risen to a whole new level. Added with the fact that it had already become divine metal in the first place, it was definitely not inferior to a level 8 god tool. Otherwise, Faceless would not have been moved at first sight, and asked Ling Han to give it up. Sword chi surged, and Ling Han launched a powerful counterattack. However, with the combined suppression of the 5 pinnacle-level elites, Ling Han was finally unable to continue chasing after Tai Wuya. He had Tai Wuya flee to one side, and he took out alchemical pills and swallowed them madly. Although he had temporarily suppressed Ling Han, the members of the 5 sects all felt a chill in their hearts. Moreover, Ling Han still had a lot of room for improvement. To say nothing of the pinnacle level, he could at least advance 3 subminor levels, and reach the peak stage of the consummate level. More importantly, who could guarantee that Ling Han would not advance to the heavenly body tier? At that time, the 5 sects could only wait for death. No matter the cost, we must suppress and kill this brat. Han Feng said sternly. If they miss this opportunity, there might not be a next time. Activate the ancestral weapons together. The 5 great elites did not move anymore. They could not compare to the 5 god tools, and would not be of much help even if they went up. It was better to focus on activating the 5 god tools, causing them to unleash even more powerful might. However, though these 5 god tools were powerful, to awaken and activate them would also have to pay a huge price. Previously, they had completely sucked away the power of the 50 disciples, directly causing them to collapse. If they wanted to suppress Ling Han, this naturally required the full power of the god tools, but it did not last long, and the 5 god tools showed signs of weakening. After all, These 5 god tools had been passed down for too long, and some of the divine patterns on them had already been worn away. Although they could just barely maintain their might, their endurance was greatly inferior to when they had been at their peak. All of you, give it your all. Han Feng had the disciples of the 5 sects take turns to inject power into the 5 god tools so that they could continue to activate. However, there was a limit to manpower. The power that had been sucked dry had not yet recovered, and they had to be drawn again. How could they draw it back? If they did not have enough origin power, they would have to use blood essence to make up for it. This time, the disciples of the 5 sects were not as simple as their faces turning pale. Their life essence was being sucked away, directly damaging their lifespan and future progress. If it was not absolutely necessary, Han Feng and the others would not be willing to sacrifice themselves like this, but who asked Ling Han to be too terrifying? If they did not kill him this time, then the 5 sects would be waiting to be flattened by him. Thus, even if the 100 or so disciples here all died here, they had to get rid of the future trouble. Under the full suppression of the 5 god tools, Ling Han was indeed riddled with wounds. Not only was he bathed in blood, but even his godly bones had cracks, shattering piece by piece. After all, his physique had not advanced to the level of level 9 godly metal yet. The people of the 5 sects were all overjoyed. After paying a huge price, they could finally kill this great enemy. Chapter 1300. Brother Ling, you're truly extraordinary, Faceless said sincerely. If our cultivation levels are equal, I really don't have the confidence to defeat you. After witnessing Ling Han's terrifying physique and recovery ability, he actually said that he didn't have the confidence to defeat him. That meant that he had the confidence to not be defeated. Obviously, he definitely had an astonishing trump card. How could someone who could cultivate to the pinnacle level at the Sun-Moon tier be an ordinary person? Just like how Sun-Moon tier was rarer than Mountain River tier, and Heavenly Body tier was rarer than Sun-Moon tier, the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier was naturally rarer than the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier. The higher one's cultivation level in martial art, the harder it was to ascend, and the same was true for pinnacle level. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I'll definitely cultivate diligently so that I can battle Brother Faceless at the same cultivation level as soon as possible. I'll fight to my heart's content. Faceless didn't feel that Ling Han's words were exaggerated at all. The lower one's cultivation level, the more one couldn't afford a few years' difference in cultivation time. However, after reaching the Heavenly Body tier, advancing a minor level could easily take several million years. To say nothing of a few years' difference, even a million years' difference wouldn't be a problem. Of course, prodigies like them probably wouldn't need as long as several million years. Perhaps hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands of years would be enough. However, with the gap in cultivation level between him and Ling Han, how could he need tens of thousands of years to make up for it? Come, if I don't cultivate diligently, you'll soon catch up to me, Faceless said with a smile. Oh, that's right, Brother Faceless. Did you specially come to participate in the Two-Realm Prodigy Gathering? Ling Han asked. I heard that there's a supreme prodigy on the Cloud Apex planet called Yu Ying. Firstly, I want to meet the prodigy of the Netherworld, and secondly, I also want to spar with Yu Ying, Faceless said. He paused and then continued, however, since I've met Brother Ling, I'm not in a hurry to find Yu Ying. King tiers like him would seek out others to challenge in order to find the flaws in their cultivation path and perfect it. Naturally, only king tiers of the same cultivation level could give him such pressure. Others were far from it. Although Ling Han's strength was still slightly inferior, Faceless wouldn't have any chance of winning if he suppressed his cultivation level. Thus, this could still serve as a form of training. More importantly, he had received a lot of inspiration from Ling Han's discussion of Tao. Lunar Shadow Ling Han grumbled in his heart. Why didn't the young kings of this generation have the habit of coming up with proper names? Faceless, Moon Shadow, they didn't seem like real names at all. Brother Faceless, I'm going back to Wolf Fong City. What about you? Since I have nothing to do, I'll go with you. The two of them returned to the Wolf Fong City. Ling Han took out a large number of boundary spirit stones and handed them over to the Gold Origin auction house. He didn't auction them, but sold them directly. As for how the auction house would deal with them, he couldn't be bothered. Of course, this large amount was only relative to the amount that others could obtain. In fact, it wasn't a lot, but it was very shocking that a person could take out such a large amount. After Ling Han purchased a large amount of godly metal, he began to increase the quality of his divine demon sword. During the Netherworld invasion, Ling Han had followed the army deep into the Netherworld and killed many Netherworld elites. Of course, he had also collected the weapons that the Netherworld had used. Moreover, the Netherworld had mobilized at least Sun-Moon tier elites. Thus, the weapons that he had collected were at least forged from level 5 godly metal. He couldn't use level 5 godly metal anymore, but he could sell it and exchange it for level 6 godly metal. Moreover, he had also sold some alchemical pills, and his wealth had become very considerable. He purchased a large amount of level 6 godly metal. It was a pity that the divine demon sword still hadn't advanced to level 7 after devouring all of it. It was still lacking by at least 1/3, which made Ling Han depressed. He discussed Dao with Faceless, and after 10 days, Faceless had gained a lot. He decided to go into seclusion again and completely stabilize his cultivation level at the peak stage of the pinnacle level. After the 2-realm prodigy gathering, he would start to advance to the heavenly body tier. Ling Han also began to concoct alchemical pills in the city. He needed money now to exchange for level 6 godly metal. No matter what, he had to advance the divine demon sword to level 7. Level 8 was probably impossible. He only had less than a year left. In the Black Tower, the infant azure flame eagle had also grown very big. Its wings were already as long as a person's length. Moreover, it was perched on the reincarnation tree, and it could even receive the occasional guidance of a saint, showing its extraordinary state. It was clearly only a year old, yet it had already advanced to the spiritual ocean tier. This was extremely astonishing. This kind of battle prowess naturally couldn't be of much help to Ling Han. However, it was used as a messenger, traveling between the Purple Moon Army and Wolffang City, and delivering love letters for Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Being able to fly in the immortal realm was still very impressive. Ling Han also planned to properly nurture this azure flame eagle. Perhaps it could reach the Sun-Moon tier or even the heavenly body tier in the future. If it followed him, the Alchemy Emperor, Bloodline and whatnot wouldn't be a problem at all. Alchemy became Ling Han's main focus. In order to earn money, he didn't even hesitate to concoct berserk blood spirit pills and hand them over to the Gold Origin auction house to sell on his behalf. This caused quite a commotion in Wolffang City. That was because the berserk blood spirit pill was known as the saint medicine of the Sun-Moon tier. Directly raising one subminor level could save one tens of thousands of years of cultivation time. This meant that one would have tens of thousands of years to comprehend the great Tao and break through to a higher cultivation level. The lifespan of immortals was long, but time was incredibly valuable. If one couldn't break through before their lifespan ran out, they could only wait for death. Who wasn't afraid of death? The more superior a person's life was, the more they didn't want to die, what more when it came to immortals. They were high and mighty, and could kill countless ordinary beings with a snap of their fingers. Who didn't want to live as long as heaven and earth? Thus, the berserk blood spirit pill was very popular. Unfortunately, it took half a month to concoct this thing, and one could only obtain one at a time. Secondly, the wealth of Sun-Moon tier couldn't compare to that of Heavenly Body tier and Eternal River tier, after all. Even if Ling Han took out 6 berserk blood spirit pills in one go, the total income was still less than that large realm spirit stone. Thankfully, there was still some time. Ling Han believed that he should be able to obtain enough level 6 godly metal before the 2-realm prodigy gathering, and upgrade the divine demon sword to level 7. After the battle with the 5 sects, he also understood one thing. These forces that had been passed down for millions of years indeed had a considerable amount of resources and couldn't be underestimated. Thus, he focused on increasing his own strength. Because the current situation was special, he didn't need to go to some ancient site to risk his life. He only needed to wait for 3 months, and then temper his body with the immortal flames. Then he would eat the berserk blood spirit pill, and his cultivation level would soar. Middle stage of the consummate level, late stage, peak stage. At this time, the two-realm prodigy gathering was finally about to begin. Ling Han received a few pieces of good news. Firstly, he had finally obtained enough level 6 godly metal and upgraded the divine demon sword to level 7. Secondly, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had also completed her military service and obtained her freedom. However, she wouldn't leave the two-realm battlefield because the Xie clan had never expressed that they wouldn't pursue the matter of her fleeing marriage. It was one thing for Xie Donglai to fall out of favor, but he actually dared to humiliate the Xie clan, so how could the Xie clan let this matter rest? Fortunately, the two-realm prodigy gathering would also be held in the two-realm battlefield, so she didn't need to leave and risk her life. After this, she could still stay in the Purple Moon Army and wait to leave the Cloud Apex planet with Ling Han. This was also good. No matter what, she was still a member of the Cloud Phoenix sect, and if she personally witnessed her sect being razed to the ground by Ling Han, it would inevitably be strange. Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden set out and headed toward the Mountain River Forest. Chapter 1301. The Mountain River Forest was where the prodigies of the two realms would be held. However, not everyone could enter this place. On the contrary, entering the Mountain River Forest was the first trial, and many people who thought themselves to be geniuses would be eliminated. Only true prodigies would be able to enter. This was a very large area, but it was enveloped by the rules of heaven and earth all year round. No one could step into it, not even sages. Every 77,777 years, the rules of heaven and earth would change and no longer have any destructive power. However, this would only last for half a month. Even so, only top-notch geniuses had the qualifications to enter. The natural laws of the world merely didn't possess any destructive power, but for ordinary people, it was still a natural chasm. Aside from that, the Sun-Moon Valley also changed every 77,777 years. However, that time was 33,333 years after the Mountain River Forest. Thus, the two-realm prodigy gathering would be held in the Mountain River Forest, and after 33,333 years, it would be held in the Sun-Moon Valley again. After 444,444 years, it would return to the Mountain River Forest. Because it was only held once every tens of thousands of years, the prodigies of both worlds attached great importance to it. Not only could they compete with the prodigies of the other world, but they could also compete with the prodigies of their own world. Just like Faceless, why would she come to Cloud Apex Planet if she had nothing better to do? The clash between the top geniuses of the two worlds could, to a certain extent, reflect the strength of the two worlds. This was also the reason why the upper echelons of the two worlds encouraged geniuses to participate in the prodigy gathering. Those who performed well would also receive generous rewards. To be honest, a large part of Ling Han's motivation was the reward. The two imperial empires jointly announced that anyone who could win first place for the immortal realm would be rewarded with a piece of level 10 godly metal. From level 9 onward, the amount of godly metal was pitifully small. If Ling Han wanted to raise the divine demon sword to celestial level, then he really could not miss out on even a single piece of high-grade godly metal. His only hope was that the divine demon sword's appetite would become a little smaller in the future. Although the Mountain River Forest was called a forest, there was only one path leading into it, and that was a canyon. Right now, this canyon was still sealed by the laws of heaven and earth, and no one could enter. In a few days, the laws of heaven and earth would open again, and those with outstanding talent would be able to enter. Those who weren't top-notch geniuses could only lament their inadequacy. This path was extremely difficult to walk. If one tried to be brave, it was not impossible for them to die halfway. Because there were only a few days left, there were many people gathered here. Some were here to participate in the Heaven's Chosen meeting, while others knew their place and planned to have a good time outside. They could brag about it for hundreds of years. They were all deities, after all, so they didn't care about the wind and rain. Everyone was either sitting or standing, waiting for the time to come. The regulations here were extremely strange. and it was as if the netherworld and the immortal realm were perfectly fused together. Regardless of whether it was the beings of the netherworld or the immortal realm, they were both able to perfectly circulate their own techniques. Thus, in the Mountain River Forest and the Sun Moon Valley, neither of the two realms would be at a disadvantage. Even if they lost, they wouldn't be able to find an excuse. Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden sat next to each other, appearing to be very low-key. The old ginseng had long since gone off to woo young ladies and young wives, while Rabbit had his eyes fixed on the purses of others. As long as there was some great medicine hidden in them, he would definitely not miss it. He could keep an eye on them for a few days and nights, and take advantage of the time when they were about to take it to make a sneak attack. Only the infant azure flame eagle was more obedient. It stood behind Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, occasionally spreading its wings and pecking at its own feathers. It was extremely handsome and had a disdainful air about it. Ling Han named it Little Blue. In any case, it would be his junior if it followed him. I heard that even Yang Lin will come this time. Gasp, is it true? What Yang Lin? No way, you don't even know Yang Lin? He's the #1 prodigy of the Abundant Planet, and is known as the undefeated King Tier. Not only is he the personal disciple of Great Master Jiuhe, but it is also said that he had a fortuitous encounter and obtained an incomplete Saint Tool. Pooh, Saint Tool. Of course, that Yang Lin is really blessed by the heavens, actually having a Saint Tool recognize him as its master. Though it is incomplete, its might is incredibly frightening. It is said that it can even suppress those in the low extreme of the heavenly body tier, and is comparable to those in the medium extreme. And this is under the condition that Yang Lin's cultivation level is only at the Sun Moon tier. Once he advances into the heavenly body tier, he might even be able to suppress those in the Eternal River tier. Gasp, there really is such a terrifying existence? But if he obtained a Saint Tool, why hasn't it been snatched away by elites? That's right, Eternal River tiers can't possibly be afraid of him, right? Hey, do you guys know what a Saint Tool is? As long as the Saint Tool itself is not interested in you, so what if you are in the Eternal River tier? Can you subdue it? At that time, even if you kill Yang Lin, it will only be a wasted effort, and you will also have offended Great Master Jiuhe. That's right, Great Master Jiuhe is extremely frightening. It is said that he is already at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and is in the process of breaking through to the Genesis tier. Throughout the entire long light galaxy, the number of such ultimate elites can definitely be counted on 2 hands. Aside from a limited number of people, even Eternal River tiers would not dare to make a move against Yang Lin, and those who possessed such strength, and were also in the process of breaking through to the Saint tier, would not be tempted by a damaged Saint Tool at all. Once they took this step, they would be able to create Saint Tools themselves. Ling Han listened and remembered this name. Yang Lin, this should be a formidable opponent, on the same level as Faceless. Going by that logic, Yang Lin should be able to suppress the prodigies of the 2 realms, and be crowned a king among kings. That's not necessarily true. I heard that the Thousand Peaks Imperial Empire of the White Horse Planet also has a super prodigy, and she is the only daughter of the current emperor. Her name is Yun, and she has only cultivated for less than 200 years, yet shockingly has already reached the peak stage of the Sun Moon tier. That's right, I've also heard of her. She is called the Cloud Maiden, and since her debut, she has battled 376 times without a single defeat. Moreover, all of her opponents are much stronger than her in terms of cultivation level. Hee, don't you guys forget that our Cloud Apex planet also has a young king tier. Ling Han. Pei, who is Ling Han? Is he worthy of mentioning him at this time? The young king tier I'm talking about is Yu Ying of the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. Yu Ying is indeed worthy of being called a young king tier. He is invincible in his generation and at the same cultivation level. Don't look down on Ling Han. The person who had just mentioned Ling Han's name was indignant. I've heard that the Heaven Sword Palace, the Earth Dragon sect, and the other 3 great sects joined forces to attack him, yet they were all defeated by him alone. He definitely has a place among the prodigies of the present age. TSK, what kind of trash is the Heaven Sword Palace? They don't even have a single heavenly body tier elite, so what's the big deal about defeating them? Someone said in disdain. Ha, Tai Chi, if you have the ability, go and defeat those 5 great sects. Someone in the crowd mocked the person who had just spoken. However, everyone shook their heads. The strength of Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, and Yu Ying was publicly acknowledged. However, what was Ling Han? At most, he was only a newbie. Perhaps he would be able to truly make a name for himself in the great battle of the Sun Moon Valley 444 years later. However, it was clear that he was still far from being able to do so now. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden stood up and said, "If anyone thinks that Ling Han isn't strong enough, let me experience his strength." Chapter 1302. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden unleashed her might, and 2 phoenix wings that were several kilometers long unfurled behind her. They were burning with divine flames, and it was as if a true phoenix had descended, exuding a terrifying might. She naturally couldn't tolerate others slandering Ling Han. There were no heavenly body tier elites here, so how could ordinary Sun Moon tier elites withstand her might? They all trembled, feeling as if this woman could burn them to ashes with a light flap of her wings. Haha, what a powerful aura, young lady. Can I experience it? There was a long laugh, and a young man flew over. His eyes were filled with admiration and possessiveness as he looked at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Beautiful women were easy to find, but top-notch beauties at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier were like the pearls on the crown, incredibly rare. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden didn't speak. She simply raised her right hand, and countless flames condensed to form a sword at the man. The young man smiled and said, "I'm Rong Tao. What's your name, young lady?" Although he said he wanted to experience it, he had no intention of becoming enemies with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Instead, he just wanted to use this excuse to talk to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. How could the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden pay attention to him? She merely waved her hand, indicating that he should attack quickly if he wanted to fight. "Then I'll have to offend you." Rong Tao moved, charging at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He didn't hold back and instead used his full power, wanting to suppress this exquisite beauty in the shortest time possible. He had seen countless women, and knew that women like the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden would definitely be incredibly arrogant. If he wanted to win her heart, flattery was useless. He had to first defeat her, and only then would she let go of her pride. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden waved her sword of flames, also using her full power to defeat her opponent as soon as possible to redeem Ling Han's name. The 2 of them battled, and Rong Tao soon revealed an expression of shock because he discovered that his opponent was very strong, too strong, so strong that he didn't even have a sliver of a chance of victory. Both of them were at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and their cultivation levels were equal. However, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a 4-star genius, while Rong Tao was only a 2-star genius. There was a difference of 2 stars of battle prowess, and this was a crushing gap. Soon, Rong Tao was sent flying by a sword, and had no choice but to flee. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden withdrew her fire sword wings, and calmly said, "In a battle of equals, Ling Han can defeat me with a single strike." Hiss! Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. They weren't afraid of people who didn't know what was good, but they were afraid of comparing the 2. Rong Tao was already very strong, yet he was defeated by the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's sword in just a few moves. Moreover, the 2 of them were at the same cultivation level, and this was in accordance with the rules of the Mountain River Forest. However, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had admitted that she was no match for a single strike from Ling Han. Is this Ling Han really that strong? At the very least, Ling Han had left an impression in their hearts, and they knew that there might be a genius slowly rising. Ling Han smiled and said, "Why should I lower myself to their level? Wait until I defeat everyone and obtain first place. That will be more useful than any words." "I just can't bear to hear others say such things," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said, sounding like a little woman. Ling Han's heart skipped a beat and he said, "Let's go somewhere else, and let your husband reward you properly." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden rolled her eyes and said, "You dare? Be careful or I'll beat you up." Ling Han chuckled and said, "Didn't you say that in a battle of the same cultivation level, you wouldn't be a match for me? That's a lie. If you dare to make a move against me, I'll send you flying with a single slap," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden warned. Ling Han laughed loudly and moved closer to her ear, saying, "Say, wife, a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. Right now, I really can suppress you with a single strike." "You dare?" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden glared at him, but there was an extremely seductive look in her eyes. Ling Han's heart involuntarily skipped a beat. He was just about to take a step forward so that he could at least kiss her when he saw a huge commotion in front of him. He saw a starship descending from the sky, causing the people in the vicinity to hurriedly move aside. Very soon, the cabin door of the starship opened, and a young man walked out. No, it should be said that he was only 16 or 17 years old, but the aura exuding from his body was incredibly powerful. This was a young King Tyr, and it was as if the stars in the sky were trembling as he took a step forward. It was a breathtaking sight. "Yang Lin." Someone called out this person's name, their voice trembling. He was Yang Lin. Not only was he astonishingly talented in martial art, but his luck was also heaven-defying. He had obtained a damaged saint tool that could suppress even low-level heavenly body tier elites. "Yang Lin, I love you. Let's have children together." A bold woman immediately began to confess her love. She was extremely wild. Yang Lin strode forward, and there were 4 men and women following behind him. They were all dragons and phoenixes among men, and the aura that they exuded was similarly terrifying. However, their demeanor was clearly inferior to Yang Lin, so they should be his followers. This was very astonishing. These 4 men and women could definitely be called prodigies, yet they were actually willing to be inferior to Yang Lin. From a certain perspective, it was clear how powerful Yang Lin was. As expected, he's not inferior to Faceless. Ling Han nodded, giving his evaluation of this youthful King Tyr. He definitely couldn't possibly be so young. Rather, he should have eaten some divine fruit that caused him to appear especially tender. As Yang Lin walked, everyone automatically opened up a path. To say nothing of Sun-Moon tier elites, even if heavenly body tier elites appeared, they could possibly be suppressed by that damaged saint tool. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. Even a damaged saint tool was so awesome, yet he had a celestial tool like the Black Tower, yet he could only use it to hide and protect his life. This was really too embarrassing. "I'm really sorry," Small Tower said coldly. Yang Lin arrived. After a while, another important figure appeared. It was a woman, and she was as beautiful as a celestial maiden. Her beauty was not inferior to the heavenly phoenix divine maidens, and her bearing was outstanding. She was like a princess, noble and graceful. The Cloud Maiden was the daughter of the Emperor of the Thousand Peaks Imperial Empire. She was noble, beautiful, and talented. Beside her, there was also a handsome young man. The 2 of them walked side by side, appearing to be very intimate. Who knew how many men were green with envy? That's the disciple of the Thousand Peaks Imperial Empire. His name is Zuoquan, and he's also an impressive prodigy. However, he's still slightly inferior to the Cloud Maiden. However, he has cultivated for a long time, and has already reached the heavenly body tier. It's said that the Thousand Peaks Imperial Empire intends to betroth his beloved daughter to him, and the Cloud Maiden also seems to be interested in this senior brother. Sigh, all the good cabbages have been taken by pigs. Why hasn't anyone discovered my talent? You can just go somewhere cool and stay. The Cloud Maiden was escorted here by Zuoquan, and they were also riding on a magnificent starship. The starship was covered in formation patterns that could withstand galactic-level disasters. Ling Han's eyes burned with desire. This was because this starship was constructed from a large amount of high-grade godly metal. If he could obtain it, his divine demon sword would definitely be able to advance half a step further, even if it didn't advance to level 8. The 1,000-phoenix divine maiden was jealous, and she couldn't help but pinch his waist. Chapter 1304. Huh, you only arrived a step earlier than me. Don't look like you've waited for a long time. A voice traveled over from afar, yet it was as if it was whispered beside one's ear, extremely clear. The jade-like handsome man laughed and said, "A step earlier is still early. Don't you disagree?" With a light laugh, another person appeared from the jade-like man. He was incredibly handsome, his aura surging, and had the demeanor of a king tier. Here comes another great man. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but feel astonished. Though she was filled with confidence in Ling Han, these two people, including Qi Huangji, had surpassed the level of young king tiers. One couldn't even look up to them, and could only kneel down to admire them. These two people were both at the heavenly body tier, and they were terrifyingly young. Their flames of life were like blazing flames, and they couldn't be more than 10,000 years old. "Are they natural rock spirits?" a knowledgeable person asked. "Gasp, I know who they are," someone suddenly shouted, incredibly excited. "Who are they?" the others all asked. "In the faraway abundant sea galaxy, there is a green sea saint. He only has one disciple, and is called the North Emperor. In the neighboring abundant sea galaxy, there is a natural rock spirit saint who cultivated into a saint. He is called the Cloud Stone Saint. He has a descendant with a human, and this descendant has inherited a portion of his bloodline. He was born powerful, and is called the Stone Emperor." Everyone was speechless. A saint had actually appeared in their galaxy. In comparison, Yang Lin, who had only obtained a damaged saint tool, was practically a pauper. When the Stone Emperor traveled, he used Phoenix Blood True Gold as his mount and returning Dream Wood as his carriage. Thus, he casually obtained 2 pieces of saintly material. However, this Stone Emperor was really high profile. In comparison, the North Emperor was much more wretched. To say nothing of a carriage, he didn't even have a follower. They had also come to participate in the 2-realm prodigy gathering. Ling Han nodded internally. There was finally someone in the immortal realm that could rival Qi Huangji, and these 2 people would also become his formidable opponents. In a fair battle, he naturally couldn't defeat a heavenly body tier elite, but after entering the mountain river forest, his cultivation level would all be reduced to the mountain river tier. In a battle of equals, Ling Han definitely didn't think he would lose to anyone. Otherwise, he would really have cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll for nothing. This was a technique of the celestial realm. The Stone Emperor and the North Emperor didn't take anyone seriously at all. The 2 of them strode forward and entered the gorge, quickly disappearing into its depths. Although the Stone Emperor's carriage was just sitting there, no one dared to try anything funny. What a joke! That was saintly material, and that bull even had a sliver of intelligence. Once it unleashed its might, even an eternal river tier would be annihilated if they approached. Who would dare covet it? The appearance of 2 kings among kings made the entire netherworld speechless. Who would have thought that the immortal world would suddenly have 2 top-notch prodigies from other star domains? In fact, including Ling Han, there were 3 of them. Sure enough, I didn't come to the wrong place. It was worth it. Faceless eyes lit up. He could feel it even through a layer of cloth. For a young king, they wouldn't cower no matter how strong their opponent was. Even if they couldn't beat their opponent for the time being, they would treat it as a goal to strive for and surpass it. On the contrary, being invincible was lonely. There was no motivation to advance, no target to surpass. "Brother Ling, let's set out as well," Faceless said. Seeing so many king-level prodigies in a row caused his fighting spirit to burn. He was eager to battle. "Okay." Ling Han nodded. Little Qing was left outside. Its cultivation level was too weak, so it couldn't pass through the gorge. Moreover, Ling Han didn't want to expose the secret of the Black Tower, so he naturally couldn't put Little Qing inside. It belonged to the sky anyway, so he would just let it soar. From its birth until now, it hadn't truly lived on its own for more than a few days. As for the old ginseng and rabbit, they couldn't count on them. Firstly, they might not be qualified to enter the gorge, and secondly, They didn't have any interest in becoming king-level prodigies. Ling Han and the others walked into the gorge. They had only taken a single step when they immediately felt a powerful pressure bearing down on them. This made them feel an urge to leave as soon as possible. However, 2 of the 3 of them were king-level prodigies. Although the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was slightly weaker, she was still a 4-star genius. How could she be frightened by this? They merely circulated their origin power and then strode forward. Their footsteps weren't affected at all. However, after walking about halfway, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden started to show signs of strain. She could no longer maintain her calm posture, and sweat started to pour down her face. In contrast, Ling Han and Faceless were both relaxed. There wasn't the slightest bit of strain on them. It was clear that 4-star prodigies were qualified to pass through this gorge. However, the pressure was still not small. It wasn't enough to just have ability. They also needed to have a certain amount of willpower. Seeing that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was struggling to walk, Ling Han stretched out his arms and picked her up. "Woo, what are you doing?" the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden exclaimed in surprise. She hurriedly tried to push Ling Han away. "Wife, you're so tired. Why don't I carry you?" Ling Han said with a smile. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden looked embarrassed. If it were only the 2 of them, she wouldn't mind being closer to Ling Han. She said, "There are people here." Meanwhile, Faceless said coldly, "Brother Ling, we're both people who are pursuing the peak of martial art. Let's not be distracted by women." There was a hint of killing intent in his eyes as he glanced at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. It was as if he wanted to help Ling Han get rid of a hidden danger. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's favorable impression of Faceless instantly fell to rock bottom. He actually wanted to separate her and Ling Han. Moreover, his method was extremely violent. He wanted to destroy her body. What a shameless guy. Serves him right for not being able to find a wife. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Brother Faceless, you should also try to find a female friend. Trust me, having a female friend definitely won't hinder your progress in martial art. On the contrary, you'll be even more motivated to climb to the peak of martial art and protect those around you." This is a very powerful belief. Faceless shook his head. His heart was extremely pure. There was only martial art, so what need was there for him to be distracted by other things? With Ling Han carrying her, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was naturally extremely relaxed. The 3 of them quickly passed through the canyon, and the terrifying pressure instantly disappeared. However, a mysterious power suddenly acted on the 3 of them, reducing their cultivation level to the mountain river tier. No, this wasn't power, but rather a kind of regulation. Not only did it reduce everyone's power to the mountain river tier, but it also reduced the regulations of heaven and earth that they could use. It was as if the limit of this world was the mountain river tier. Thus, it was useless no matter how freakish or prodigious one was. How could human strength defeat the heavens? As expected, the mountain river tier. Ling Han sensed the power in his body. The 4 sun-moon tiers inside his body had mysteriously disappeared. In fact, the toughness of his physique had also decreased significantly, and it was only as tough as level 5 godly metal. However, level 5 godly metal had still reached the level of the sun-moon tier, and hadn't been completely weakened. Aside from a limited number of kings among kings who had reached perfection in the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier, ordinary king tiers didn't even have the right to break through Ling Han's defenses. The indestructible heaven scroll was a celestial technique, and it wasn't just for show. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.